it makes no sense. The only time it makes sense is when you overlay the map of these attacks with the geological map of Nigeria, mapping where all the resources are. And then you realize that what you are witnessing is simply places being cleared out for the sake of mining. It's DR Congo. That's it. That's the simple answer. It's DR Congo. That's what's happening. Nigeria is basically North Kivu.
Wow.
Simple as that. Like, I just solved the terrorism question. It's not Kivu. That's what's happening.
Peace and blessings, everybody. I am your brother Orina, all the way from the motherland, all the way from Kenya, Nairobi, nation's capital. Welcome to Sell Afrika to Africans. Today, you know, it's very rare that I get to have people who I've been looking up to for so long. And today, this is one of the people who I've been a fan of. Legendary Nigerian investigative journalist. I mean, you've seen him uncovering truths in Nigeria. You've seen him literally put his life on the line for the sake of Nigerian people and for the sake of Africans. Well, today we have him on Sell Afrika to Africans. We're going to talk all about it. And I'm a big fan. You can see, you guys, I'm excited because I'm a stan of this person over here. Guys, please welcome the one and only David Hundeyin. David, how are you doing?
Not too bad.
How's Kenya so far? You landed yesterday. How's everything? I know you told me you're a honorary Kenyan now.
In fact, for some reason, there's a number of people who think I live in Kenya. I don't know who told them that, but
yeah.
Because I'm in and out so much.
You're in and out, man. I've been a fan, and every guest that I feature on Sell Afrika to Africans, I give them their flowers. So I want to give you your flowers. You know, it's very rare we get people like you who literally put their livelihoods on the line for the sake of their people. And I've always wanted to know, where did that come from? Where did that urge of saying, no, I have to push, and I have to speak against poor Nigerian leadership? Like, where did that, what sparked you?
I would love to sit here and say that there was some grand design or there was some big, visually spectacular event that happened, but no, not really. It was more of a combination of many little factors, starting from my childhood. So I was raised in what, if I'm being humble, I would call an upper middle class family, probably a little better off than that. And one striking feature of my background was because we were Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, okay.
So that in itself, there's a whole story there, which I'll probably get to in a sec. But the key defining feature of my childhood was that there was this duality that I constantly saw. So on the one hand, I'm living the life that people think I'm living, right? Very, very privileged lifestyle by African standards.
Okay.
On the other hand, because we're Jehovah's Witnesses and the vast majority of Jehovah's Witnesses in that part of the world are not privileged people, and you're worshiping with them on a weekly basis. Back then, I don't know if it's still the case now. Back then, you had to go out with a bag and preach. Meet people as they are in their neighborhood. So, and then in my family, we kind of took it a step further because I think, I'm not entirely sure why my parents took that decision, but instead of choosing a congregation that was closer to home, they chose one that was like 7 or 8 kilometers away outside of the middle class bubble that we were in a very, very, very underprivileged part of Lagos. So if you ever Google K2, that's Ketu in Lagos, just see what it looks like. It was that kind of place.
Okay.
Like stereotypical African urban slum, like a real slum, where there's slum houses with like doors, door to door. In Nigeria, they call it face me, I face you. Right.
They share.
Yeah. And there's like 20 doors in one passageway and all of them are sharing one toilet and one kitchen. When you enter the place, there's this smell of kerosene residue, a faint hint of urine, and just the smell of poverty, as I call it.
Okay.
And you have to go in there and you can't show discomfort because you're trying to sell something to people. Back then, we were physically trying to sell magazines to people.
Okay.
Right. And why that had such a striking impact on me when I was a child was that even as a child, I could see very clearly that something was very, very wrong with this picture. I could see that the people that we are going to preach this thing to, these are people whose problems I can see very clearly. Their problems are economic. And I can see very clearly that my old man who is with me, who is trying to sell them a 20 naira Watchtower or Wake magazine, this guy, if he so wished, could change their lives at any given point in time. And I say that with all due humility, but that's just the reality. And he didn't. And instead, he's selling them this thing where they're basically being told that their hope for having a better life comes from the kingdom of God. So we were living in the kingdom of God from their perspective, because we lived in a way that was probably outside of their scope of imagination.
Yes.
Right. So we had the life that they didn't even know was possible. But then we would leave our house. It was an 8-bedroom mansion in a very nice part of town. Would leave our house, right? We'll choose one of our 6 cars to take out, drive out of the GRA, that's government reservation area.
Okay.
Drive 7 kilometers down the expressway to this really underprivileged neighborhood, which is directly opposite the landfill site. And then the smell from the landfill site is constantly wafting over. So you can imagine. And we're here telling these people that
come join the kingdom of God.
The kingdom of God is going to solve all your problems. This person I'm talking to, the house he's living in, probably my school fees for that term is more than his annual rent.
Man.
Easily. But I'm here telling this person that his problems, which I can clearly see are economic, will be solved only by the kingdom of God. Somehow there are no available solutions. There are no human solutions to his problem. I knew immediately, even as a child, that not just from a doctrinal point of view or from a religious point of view, but just from a social point of view in general, something is very, very wrong with this society. I could just, because the disparity is so jarring in Nigeria that it's very difficult to ignore. Maybe in a place like Kenya, even though obviously there is inequality, but there is also an effort to at least dress it up. So if you bring someone from Nigeria who has lived all their lives in Lagos or Port Harcourt or something, you bring them to Nairobi, it's like a different world to them, because everywhere you go in Nairobi, even in the underprivileged areas, the main roads, they look okay. They're motorable. There's tall buildings everywhere. There is poverty, but it's not like, the Kibera type of poverty that you see everywhere. In Nigeria, it's not like that. In Nigeria, it's like there's Lavington and there's Kibera and there's nothing in between. And they're right next to each other. And that's how the whole country is.
Okay.
So it's very jarring. I don't know if you've seen those pictures of the public buses in Lagos, what they look like, those yellow buses.
I haven't. How are they?
You should Google them. They look like they've taken bullets, right? Old, they're probably not in roadworthy condition. They're awful to look at. And right next to one of those buses, which has like 30 people inside, you might see a Rolls Royce Cullinan. So that's just the kind of place it is. And because I grew up in both worlds, they created that duality in me. And I knew that even though there was no like ideological clarity on what I want to do when I get older or something, but I just knew that I'm not okay with this. I'm not okay with the idea that poor people need to wait for God, or that there are no solutions to their problems. I'm not okay with the idea that, I remember there was a time when, because my dad was kind of like a well-respected person within the Jehovah's Witness organization, and he was giving a talk, as they call their sermons.
Okay.
And he was referencing Nigeria's perennial electricity problem. And he said something to the effect of, these are all problems that will be solved in the kingdom of God. And I thought to myself, well, maybe from these people's perspective, constant 24/7 power is something that only a divine intervention can provide. But from our perspective, why don't we live like that if we believe that it's only a divine intervention that can provide that. Why do we have a 35 kVA diesel generator at home? When we travel, even within Africa, why do these other places within Africa with people that look just like us, why do they have these things? And somehow these people have to wait for the kingdom of God. You know, so from that age, I just understood I don't want to be a part of whatever this is, both on a spiritual or religious level and on a social level. Whatever this thing is that maintains people at these extremes, I don't want to be part of it. I'm not comfortable with it. And at the time, when I was like a teenager, I thought that my solution for that would be just to leave.
Okay.
Like leave Nigeria as soon as I was old enough to and just never come back. That's what I thought at the time. I don't want to be part of this. I've psychologically rejected this society that I'm from, and I'm just going to go away and never come back. So at 18, I actually went away. I went to study in the UK. So I went to the University of Hull. I studied for 3 years. I did a Bachelor of Arts in Creative Writing and Media Culture and Society, which is like a creative writing and journalism double honors program. And then after I finished, I decided to stay in the UK and see if I could find some work. And I spent 2 years bouncing from one pointless job to another. So if you just mention any random job, I've probably done it. I've worked at a supermarket till, I've worked as a factory floor operative, different kinds of factories. I think the worst job I had was at a place called Iqbal Poultry Factory in 2012, in a place called Wythenshawe outside Bradford.
How was it?
My job was, after the chickens have been beheaded and they've been put on the line going past, my job was to put my hand, gloved hand, into the hole where the neck hole, where the head used to be, and bring out the heart, toss it. And sometimes the heart will still be beating and it would squirt chicken blood in your face. And no matter how much you shower after your shift, you come out smelling like chicken shit. Every single time. You know, I did all those kinds of things until eventually I realized, like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything with my life. I have a degree. I'm not getting anywhere. This society that I'm in, that's the UK, it's clearly not built for me to get ahead. Even though I didn't necessarily have a full understanding of what like systemic racism is or anything like that, I could clearly see that if you look like me in this society, there's a definite disparity in how you are treated. It's not because I'm dumb that I'm not getting this interview, or that I interviewed and I'm not getting this role. It's not because I don't have the grades. It's not because I don't have the capacity. It's not because I didn't perform well. There's something else. And it's clear what that something else is. And eventually I reached the conclusion that the only place where it's possible for me to achieve self-actualization was back home. So I took the decision in 2013 to just pack up and just return home. So I got home April 2013. In Nigeria, there's a mandatory 1 year national service program. I don't know if you have something like that here.
National service, we don't, huh?
Right.
We don't.
Right, so it's called the NYSC, the National Youth Service.
Oh, we do, NYS. Yeah, national.
Mandatory.
Oh, it's mandatory.
Yeah.
It's mandatory in Nigeria.
It's mandatory.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
You can only get an exception if you graduated over the age of 30. But if you're a university graduate, it's mandatory. You have to do it.
Wow.
So I spent a year doing that, and I went inland, up country, to a state called Ekiti State. It's like most people don't go to Ekiti State.
Why
You know?
though?
It's out of the way. It's like going to West Pokot or something. What would you be doing there?
I get you.
Yeah. So I spent a year there working at the local TV station. And after I finished that, which was quite an interesting experience, then I go back to Lagos. And my idea was that I was going to get a job in the journalism space in Lagos, maybe get a job in print. And from there, figure out my path. Fortunately or unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. I was actually able to secure a position at a daily newspaper called The Vanguard. But they decided very quickly, the editor assessed me and decided very quickly that you're not going to stay. You're going to move on within 6 months.
Okay.
Because apparently they gave me this, like, an assignment to do, like to to assess me, and the standard at which I delivered, they decided that this guy is just going to leave.
Okay.
So there's no point hiring him and creating churn in our newsroom. So he then made the decision to hook me up with what he thought was a better job.
Okay.
So he called up a friend of his who ran a public relations agency. And that's how I ended up starting my career in public relations. You know, people typically move from journalism
To PR.
PR. I moved from PR to journalism.
Interesting.
So I actually started off in publicity and PR. Now, that was 2014, October 2014 when I started. At that time, as you recall, Nigeria was the largest economy in Africa, $568 billion GDP.
Who was president? Good luck.
Good luck, Jonathan. Yeah. Growing at 7% annually, third fastest growing economy in the world, behind only China and Qatar, clashed as parts of a new development bloc, Mint, Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, Turkey. The country was on the tier, right? So I kind of took it for granted that, of course, this trajectory is just going to continue naturally. I mean, I didn't know too much about Nigeria's history at the time. All I knew was that, well, the country now is apparently a better place than it was when I was a kid. And it's obviously going to continue along that trajectory. Why wouldn't it? So 2015 came along, and even though where I worked wasn't directly involved in the presidential campaign, because there was an election coming up in 2015, a lot of our sister agencies were involved in the campaigns and were working for the political opposition.
Okay.
So I had a front row seat to a lot of things which I had never seen before and which were very confusing and very frightening to me at the time. I mean, if you were to mention the term regime change operations to me at the time, I would have had no idea what you were talking about. I had no idea what I was looking at. All I knew was I'm seeing something and I don't like what I'm seeing at all. Is this an election or is it a war? What is going on? So I'll give you an example of something I saw.
Okay.
There used to be a platform, a South African tech platform called AdDynamo. I think it's defunct now. And what AdDynamo used to do was you could pay to create artificial trending topics on social media, especially on Twitter back then. So you put in your keyword, the keyword that you want to trend, and you would pay, and they would create the trending topic.
Okay.
Because back then that was a big deal. That's how to get people talking about something, get it onto the trend board. And I was in the room one day when one of these agencies that shall not be named, someone right in my presence put in a keyword that was the name of a Nigerian ethnic group. And it was being used as a pejorative. And this was apparently part of the political opposition campaign. And the idea was to get people talking about this ethnic group in Nigeria in a negative light. Because the idea was the incumbent president supposedly has a support base within this ethnic group. So everybody else needs to attack this ethnic group. And they need to be made to feel unsafe so that maybe on election day, they're not going to come out to vote. And I had never seen any of these sort of tactics before. I didn't understand. Like, yeah, I get you want to win an election, but is it ever really that serious?
I know.
You know, I didn't know what I was looking at. Tell you something else I saw. This actually happened before I returned to Nigeria, but it was after I resumed work at this place and I started developing contacts within the space that I realized what had happened. So if you recall, in 2012, Nigeria had its last major civilian airline disaster, the Dana Air crash of 2012, which killed 112 people, was it?
Wow.
Huge. It was an MD-83 that crashed just outside the airport in Lagos. I lost a friend on that crash, by the way. Now, I remember at the time I was in the UK, and within an hour of the news coming out that this plane had gone down, I was getting broadcast messages claiming that the reason the plane went down is because it had been circling, asking for permission to land, that it had a problem, but the air traffic controllers at Lagos airport supposedly refused to give it permission to land because the president's wife wanted to land first. And that because the president's wife wanted to land first, that's why this plane went down. Later on, when I came back and I got into this space, I actually got to meet the person who composed that message. And I got to realize this whole thing, it was just part of a demonization project.
Okay.
Which had started as far back as 2011. Right? So again, I didn't understand what I was looking at yet, but I knew I was looking at something really, really, really ugly. Because this level of strategic planning and, malevolence is not really something you'd expect to see in a Nigerian election. I mean, a Nigerian election typically is like, there's a lot of noise and signal and whatnot, but it's for like 5 minutes and everybody calms down and, moves on. So this thing of planning for the next election starting 4 years before and, creating these complex narratives to completely astroturf the public imagination and turn people into rabid haters of an administration, whether they even understood why they hated it or not. I just didn't understand it. It took years, actually. I would say it took maybe until about 2017, 2018 before I started to decode the things that I had seen. That first of all, the person who ran the campaign for the so-called opposition then was an American by the name of David Axelrod, who you may recall ran President Obama's 2008 change campaign. In fact, he basically transplanted Obama's 2008 campaign and made it Buhari's 2015 campaign. The keywords were the same, change. Everything was the same. They just transplanted that and that. And then all these dirty tricks and underhanded things I had never seen before that I didn't know existed. That is where those things came from. So I would say by like 2017, 2018, by this point, I had left marketing. I had started working in TV. I was working on a political satire show called The Other News. So if you ever watched The Daily Show.
Yeah. Trevor Noah.
It's basically modeled after The Daily Show. I was a writer on that show. And at this point, I had started understanding that something very, very ugly happened in 2015 and that the actors behind it were not even Nigerian. Right. I still didn't have the full picture of it yet, but I knew that somebody thumbed the scale, somebody interfered in Nigeria's political space. And as a result, this new president came in and that trajectory that Nigeria was on in the lead up 2015, it didn't come down, it fell off a cliff. Literally, 3 months before the election, Nigeria was the third fastest growing economy in the world. By that was 2015, right? That's Q1 2015.
Okay.
By Q1 2016, Nigeria was in recession.
That's within a year.
Yeah. From 7% growth to negative growth.
That's Buhari's first year.
Yeah, within about 8 months.
Damn.
Yeah. So again, at the time, I still didn't understand that there's such a thing as an economic hitman. I didn't understand those concepts then, but I knew that somebody who shouldn't have been made president came into office and that somehow these external characters were involved in it. And I thought that, okay, ahead of the next election, because this was like around 2018, I knew that, well, I didn't have much of a voice then. I was kind of trying to build a voice at the time. Nobody really knew who I was. I think I had like 700 followers on Twitter or something. I wasn't doing hard journalism yet. I was writing for a political satire show. I used to write for a few American websites and stuff, but nobody in Nigeria read them. So in fact, I think I had appeared in the New Yorker magazine. And nobody in Nigeria knew who I was.
Okay. So when did they know who you really are?
It was after the election in 2019 where this guy who made Nigeria fall off a cliff retained power, as you do.
Yeah.
I, in hindsight, very naively, then decided that my mission over the next 4 years will be to ensure that the information space in Nigeria, which is very tightly controlled and which is full of a lot of distractions, that I would constitute myself a disruption in that information space. And that in so doing, I would make it such that people would have the information that they needed to make an informed choice the next time around. That was the thinking that I had, because in my mind, something close to a mass brainwashing campaign had taken place between 2011 and 2015, which led to what shouldn't have happened in 2015. And between 2015 and 2019, the people, for whatever reason, even though they had witnessed their country fall off a cliff and people had started leaving again, people who had come back to Nigeria Nigeria has a large diaspora. So people who came back around the same time I came back, because the whole Africa Rising narrative was a thing at the time and the economy was doing things we had never seen it do before. Those people had started leaving.
Okay. Oh.
So if you've ever heard of a slang called the Japa, Nigerian slang, which is a slang for emigration. It was around 2016, 2017 that it became a thing.
Okay.
Again. So up until that point, Nigeria had been pretty much like a net recipient of like its diaspora, labor and investment. Those people that started leaving again. This wasn't hypothetical. I saw it in my own personal life. There were people that I went to school with in the UK who had come back, and between 2016 and 2018, nearly all of them left. And they all went to the UK, Canada, the US, Australia, New Zealand, mainland Europe. Everyone left. So at that point, I'm thinking, okay, ahead of 2023, something really needs to be done to the public psyche to galvanize them, to make them understand that something very horrendous has been done to them, and that they need to make a better choice in 2023. They need to elect someone who's not going to take a 7 and turn it into a -3 in 8 months, right? So I say naively because, knowing what I know now, it was never really just about voting, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's how I got into hard journalism. So it was 2019. I was writing for a Norwegian-based website called ccn.com. It was like focused on US politics, but it was owned by a Norwegian guy, as you do. So I was writing for that website and I decided to write an analysis of Nigeria's 2019 election.
Okay.
Which was actually intended for a US audience. But it's, for some reason, because the internet is that kind of place, it got picked up in Nigeria and it just went absolutely everywhere.
Okay.
So I think, bear in mind at the time, again, nobody knew who I was. I was much better known outside Nigeria than within Nigeria. My work on the TV show had earned me an IVLP nomination. So, that's the International Visitors Leadership Program, which is run by the US State Department. Back when I thought such things were good things. So at that point, I'm pretty much nobody, but this thing gets picked up, and in the space of like 24 hours, I think it got cumulatively like 50,000 retweets or something, and it's everywhere.
Okay.
I'm like, does this mean something? And then little by little, Nigerian platforms for the first time start reaching out to me like, hey, we saw what you wrote. We'd like you to do a column for us or something. So I started doing like opinion pieces and editorials for Nigerian platforms. So there's a defunct platform called The Scoop, NG, then Business Day, which still exists. I became a columnist on Business Day, a weekly columnist. And eventually my column became the most read thing on Business Day, right? It was kind of a big deal back then. But even then, this wasn't investigative journalism. This was just opinions. Then around August 2019, back then, I was doing some work with an NGO in Lagos called Rise Networks. So they received some funding from the MacArthur Foundation to do like social awareness, blah, 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 blah. So because I had been the one who actually wrote the, what's the thing called when you ask for funding? The
proposal?
Grant proposal, yes. So I was the one leading the project. When the grants came in, it wasn't a lot of money. It was like $10,000, which for those kind of things, that's not a lot of money. So I decided that the story that I wanted us to highlight was something that was kind of near to my heart. So I have a cousin. His name is Joseph. I'm going to name him here. He's a doctor. So he was doing his house job. I don't know what terminology you use for that in Kenya.
House job, you mean household jobs?
No, like after you've qualified,
okay,
and you have to do like a year in like a government hospital.
Attachment. Attachment.
So that's what you call it. Right?
Yes.
So he was doing his house job as attachment at a hospital in our hometown in Lagos. It's called Badagry. So the hospital there is called Badagry General Hospital. And he called me one day, and he had actually left at that point. He moved to the UK, as they all do. And he told me, look, even though I've left this place, the things that I saw there, I can't, in good conscience, just keep quiet about it.
Okay.
Something needs to be done. So he gave me access to some of the nurses and the doctors who actually were still working there. And they gave me access to like visuals of what was happening. And it was a mess. The generators weren't working. So sometimes doctors would carry out procedures using their phone flashlights. Like someone is holding the phone flashlight and you're doing like a cesarean section delivery.
Oh no, that's not good.
The hospital pharmacy was constantly out of stock. And very coincidentally, the MD of the hospital owned a private pharmacy, which was like next to the hospital. That one was never out of stock.
Of course. Of course. It's the same thing here, kind of. Yeah?
The basic hygiene was an issue because, you know, the global standard is that doctors must wash their hands under running water.
Yes.
But the taps weren't running.
So
instead they had the bucket of water and they used a bucket and a baler, which you're not supposed to do. There were just so many things that were wrong with the place. And what I found the most distressing, apparently there's this, I think it's a hormone. I think it's called oxytocin. But someone should fact check me here. But it's something that is given to pregnant women who need to do a CS delivery. And apparently, the hospital had like an off-brand version of this hormone, and because of that, like the death rate for cesarean section deliveries, I think was 4 in 10. Like out of every 10 women who went in to do a CS delivery, 4 wouldn't come out because of this stupid little issue, like an off-brand hormone injection. You know. So I decided to take on that story.
Okay.
It was my first attempt at any kind of investigative story. So we went there, we interviewed a couple of people, we got testimonies, we tried to take some visuals here and there because we had to do it like covertly. And yeah, so this was published and it performed moderately well. It didn't go quite gangbusters like I hoped it would, but it got the attention of the Lagos State Health Service Commission. And then they decided to start doing like unannounced checks at this hospital. The MD almost got fired. He should have got fired, but there was political interference. That's another story. A bunch of doctors who weren't showing up to work because they had like private gigs on the side, they got fired. The generators were fixed, like a bunch of things.
So your story caused the change.
Yeah. And that was when the light bulb went off above my head in like August, early September 2019, that something I sat down and wrote on my laptop probably saved somebody's life. Okay, so if I have this kind of power, I want to keep using it.
Okay.
So I didn't know how I was going to at the time, but I said, I want to do more of this. Very fortunately, I think the universe has a way of aligning itself with you when you've made certain decisions. There's a lady called Mercy Abank. She used to run this platform called Newswire, ngr.com, which was kind of like a small independent news platform in Nigeria. But crucially, even though it was small, it had some significant social media presence. So if you publish something on it, people would see it, right? And when she reached out to me, like she saw the story and she wanted me to start doing investigative pieces for Newswire. She offered me a contract. Like I snapped her hand off because apart from the fact that people are going to actually read it because the platform has some visibility, she was also offering basically editorial freedom.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, this is my project now. The money was crap.
Okay.
But it was not about the money for me at all. So at the time it was 100,000 naira a month. So 100,000 naira for reference now in USD would be roughly 65 USD.
65
Yeah.
Dollars.
Yeah, a month. So again, this was not a lot of money at all. Like this is crap. But for me, first of all, because I'd left the TV station at this time. I was independent. I had started doing copywriting on the side, which was actually quite lucrative.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like financially I'm okay. I have an income that can support me. This is actually what I want to do. So I'm using this copywriting thing as the bread and butter to fund my actual passion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I started doing. So late 2019 was when this all began.
Okay.
And when I started, I had a very clear picture in mind that the Nigerian information space, which was dominated by these sort of characters from the 70s and the 80s, who have this very sort of parochial idea of what journalism is or is not.
Mm-hmm.
Journalism has to sound a certain way. A journalist has to self-present a certain way. Journalism is only delivered using certain vocabulary. They had all these rules which are really not based on anything, except that this was the norm when they were in their youth, right? I decided I wanted to subvert every rule in the book.
That's it. That's what I like.
Like that was my whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to use like explicit language in my stories.
You mean like F words, S words?
I wanted to tell my stories in a way that wasn't the typical 5 W's and the H. So in journalism, there's a concept called the 5 W's and the H.
Mm-hmm.
What, where, when, who, and how.
Mm-hmm.
So every story has to include those elements. Mm-hmm. And there's a specific format. The opening sentence has to have this. The opening paragraph has to include all 5 elements.
Okay.
And then this is the next paragraph. Then this is the body. Then that's the quote. And then that's the conclusion. That's the stereotypical
template.
That's the journalism. I said I want to turn that on its head. So instead of writing what looked like a typical story that people's eyes glaze over within 10 seconds of opening the page, I wanted my stuff to read like a crime thriller.
Okay.
I wanted it to hold your attention. Don't get me wrong. It's not that it's not hard journalism. It's not that it's entertainment. It's not entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to make sure that the information I'm passing across is actually sticking. You're actually reading it because it's going to hold your attention. So right out of the gates at Newswire, that's what I was doing.
Okay.
And right out of the gate, the traction came with it. Like it was 10 out of 10 from day one. Because the very first story I did was a story about a phenomenon that was known as the Abuja raids. So back then in 2019, the Abuja municipal government thing, they were led by this crazy lady, some lady called Ajia Safia Umar, who apparently didn't understand that there's a difference between your personal beliefs and your job as a public official. And she was like a very, very conservative Muslim. And she was like trying to like inject that into how Abuja was governed. So she had a specific thing against prostitutes and prostitution. So her whole thing was any young lady who is out on the streets after dark is a prostitute and has thereby committed a crime. Bear in mind, under Nigerian law, prostitution itself is not explicitly criminalized. It's a bit like it's a legal gray area.
It's like Kenya.
So, but she basically criminalized it by, she de facto criminalized it, which someone in the executive is not allowed to do. You can't create laws as someone who is leading a municipal government. So all kinds of crazy things were happening to young women in Abuja, whether they were prostitutes or not. So you would be, maybe you've closed from work and you're getting into, I guess, what you guys call it, tuk-tuk, to a tricycle home. And these thugs, because like the municipal thing actually hired thugs to be their enforcers. And these thugs would stop you in the middle of the road and you get hauled off to jail because you're a prostitute. Because why are you on the street at 8 p.m. as a young woman? So there was a video of her, which I dug out. There was a video of her saying that some of these women are they're so brazen that they actually go out without covering their hair. Because in her mind, if you're a woman and you're not covering your hair, as is the norm in her conservative, brand of the Islamic faith, that means that you're doing something wrong.
But is everybody Islam in Nigeria?
What?
But like, why is she doing? I mean, why does she believe that should be the case? Like, does she believe that everybody in Nigeria is?
I don't know what her problem was. Maybe
Muslim?
again, she had difficulty understanding that there's separation of,
Yeah,
your individual beliefs have nothing to do
exactly. That's what I'm
with what
asking.
you do as a public official.
Yeah.
So crazy things were happening to women. They get hauled off to jail and then they get raped in jail.
Oh no.
Crazy things were happening. And like, I mean, if you Google the story, it's still up. You'll find it. Like, I don't want to mention some of the more gory aspects of it because it's going to color the conversation, but anyone who's watching can Google the story. Really awful things. So I did that story and it got her fired. It got her fired. And the story was cited a few months later in a ruling because one of the victims that I quoted in the story, she actually sued the FCT ministry. FCT is Federal Capital Territory. So she sued the FCT ministry and asked for compensation and whatnot. And the ruling that came out ruled in her favor and actually mentioned my story.
Wow.
So that was when the second light bulb went off above my head that, okay, you've become a powerful man now. So here's what we're going to do. Everybody, like in my mind, I had like a list of everybody that I subjectively decided
To go after.
were the problems with Nigeria. And I was like, I'm going to go after all of you. It doesn't matter whether you are Dangote or which I did go after him, by the way.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I did. I went after everybody.
But later on we'll talk about his refinery and what's happening. But go.
So going into 2020, this was like my mission. I was fully committed. I was locked in every conceivable way. Okay. I was so locked in actually that the apartment that I had at the time, my rent expired in 2019. I didn't renew it and I moved into my office. Like I literally moved into my office. Oh, wow. That's how locked in I was.
Wow.
This is my life now. This is all I'm doing. This is all I have time for. This is it for me. Financially, it's not going to do much for me. And, I still have to do my copywriting to be able to pay my rent month to month and survive and whatnot. But I don't care. I don't know what this is going to accomplish. All I know is that for the next, I don't know how long, I'm going to throw myself at this system. Like in a manner similar to how a suicide bomber uses their body as a weapon. That's how I saw myself. Wow. That's literally how I saw myself, that this is going to be the most revolutionary thing in Nigeria's information space in decades. Wow. And I guess I succeeded.
I
guess I succeeded. just not in the way that I thought. Anyway, so 2020, the reputation just kept getting bigger with every story because the size of the targets kept getting bigger with every story, and the impact, or what I thought was the impact, also kept getting bigger with every story. I'll give you an example. So in April 2020, at the height of the COVID-19 lockdown and all that stuff, the Nigerian House of Representatives was trying to sneak through this very, I don't know what adjective to use, but they're trying to sneak through a piece of legislation that was essentially going to end civil liberties as a whole, under the guise of infectious diseases, protocols, yada, yada, yada. We're going to end freedom of association, freedom of movement. We're going to introduce predictive policing, all kinds of things. We're going to give police like powers so one of the clauses in the bill was that any police officer can detain someone without warrant if he believes that the person has an infectious disease. Which is a very broad and problematic wording. Because basically, Inspector Sunday on the street, who probably just finished primary 6 and can't even speak English or something, if he says that he thinks that you have a common cold, he can arrest you. Because the common cold is an infectious disease, isn't it? So, and this was something that I kept running into over and over, because one of the things that I was doing, that I became known for in 2020, was I was doing reviews of legislation that the House was trying to pass. So how the process goes in Nigeria is that there's a first reading, there's a second reading, there's a third reading, then it goes to the Senate, there's other readings, and then it goes to the president to sign it.
To sign, okay.
Typically, if it goes past the third reading in the House, it's almost impossible.
It's over. It's over.
So what they used to do is the first and the second reading maybe will be on the same day. They'd rush it through. And then like maybe you'd get access to the bill like the night before the third reading.
When it's too late.
Yeah, that's what they used to do. So what I then became known for was I was a guy who, thanks to Mercy and some other contacts that I have, someone in the National Assembly, because another thing they used to do is there's no platform, there's no website where you can check what bills are being considered. You need to have a friend in there who knows. And there's no, so the friend will have to like use their phone and take pictures
of the documents,
and use cam scanner and send it to you. And that's how, so I was a guy, I would get it by 7 p.m. and I would sit down with my 3 laptops all night and I'm tearing through this thing and I'm writing a review of it and it goes out and it goes viral. And then by morning, it's on the 7 o'clock news.
Wow.
My review is on the news and it's creating an uproar and then hopefully that stops it from getting passed. That was what happened with this Infectious Diseases Act, because not only was I able to show that this thing is very, very, anti-liberty legislation, but that the wording of the bill itself, it was 98% plagiarized from the Infectious Diseases Act of Singapore.
Okay.
Of I think 1977 or something. So basically someone just took a very, very repressive bill from Singapore, which was not a democracy, by the way, and basically did a Control-G, removed Singapore and put Nigeria.
Okay.
And that bill had passed through 2 readings in the House, and it was about to become law if it passes through the 3rd reading. So I did that, and, myself and the spokesperson of the House, we got into a shouting match and whatnot. Eventually, that's what stopped that bill from getting passed.
Okay.
And that was when I think I won my first award. That was the People Journalism Prize for Africa 2020.
Wow.
So in my mind, this is impact. In my mind, I'm doing everything that I set out to do.
Wins after wins after wins.
Yeah, in my mind, the tide is turning. Things are changing. And I'm going to be the one who is going to take Nigeria kicking and screaming from this place of like ignorance to a place where people have access to high quality information to make better decisions. That's what I thought. Again, if you don't understand the full scope of a problem that you're dealing with, the solutions you will come up with, however well-intended or brilliant as they might be, they will just keep falling short. That's what I discovered eventually. Toward the end of 2020, I had to finally leave Nigeria because the NSAS protest happened.
I remember that.
A bunch of us were placed on no-fly lists. So I couldn't even leave the country via the airport. I had to sort of leave by road. At the time that I left, I didn't think it was going to be like permanent exile or something. I thought, well, there's a bit of heat on right now. Because clearly they just carried out a massacre. So clearly these guys are rattled. We don't know what they're capable of right now. So just leave for now. Maybe in 2-3 months when everything has calmed down, then you come. That's the idea I had in my head. I didn't know that was the last time I was going to see Nigeria till now, as we're recording this.
Wow.
So I left.
Wait, but before you leave, what did you do during that end-SARS period?
So first of all, anyone who was perceived as a protest leader or instigator or whatever was placed on a list by the DSS. The DSS is what you would call the DCI here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's
if you're placed on a list by the DCI, that's not good news.
Yeah.
You end up in a Subaru or something.
Yeah. So the Subaru.
So it was something similar in Nigeria. Nobody wants to be in that situation. And, after what actually ended the protest movement to all intents and purposes was an actual massacre. Like a bunch of people died at the Lekki Toll Plaza, which for some reason had become the spiritual beating heart of this protest movement. So at that point, you're thinking, these guys are willing to go that far because there was really no need to kill like 100 people. There was really no need. they could have gone in with horsewhips and, got everyone out of there. There had any number of things, but the decision to murder unarmed young civilians who are just basically staging a sit-in, that told me that something has fundamentally shifted about the way these people are approaching governing this country now. And it's about to become a lot more dangerous for me. And then what made my mind up for me was, the night of the massacre itself, everyone who was in the area, including myself, the internet speeds fell off a cliff. So it was very difficult to even stay up to date with what was happening because the internet had clearly been throttled. So in immediate aftermath, there were these theories going around that like the telecom operators were working with the government and all that stuff. So some of the telecom operators felt like, if we don't get a hand on this narrative, we're going to get labeled, we're going to lose
business.
The young people, because, Nigeria is like a very, 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 the median age of Nigeria is like 19 or something.
Wow.
Statistically, Nigerian is a teenager.
Wow.
So if you lose the young market in Nigeria, you're dead.
Yeah.
So they panicked and whatnot. So, they put out, they wrote a statement which they didn't put out. But I had access to that statement because I have, connects in the marketing space. Yeah. And buried somewhere in that statement was something which told me very, very clearly that, because what they said was that they had nothing to do with the internet slowed down or shut down that evening. Now, what happened was that around 6:50, which was the time when the massacre began, that they suffered a series of coordinated fiber cuts. Now, fiber optic cables are not hanging in the air. Yeah. They're buried on the ground. Yeah. And the only people that know where they are the telecom operators and the government. Right? You can't cut a fiber optic cable because you can't get to it.
Yeah.
So essentially what they were saying was that the government cut the fiber optic cables.
Indirectly saying it.
That's basically what they were saying.
Yeah.
And at that time, the government was going around claiming that, maybe some people died, but it wasn't premeditated. That was their defense, right? This was proof that it was premeditated. And I knew that I'm going to do this story. But as soon as I do this story, the first question that's going to be asked is, who is this guy's source?
Okay.
They're going to arrest me. They're going to ask me who is my source. It's going to be a whole mess. So I said, let me just leave before I publish this story. And then maybe, and very naively, maybe 2 or 3 months down the line,
you come back and things have calmed down.
Things would have calmed down. Maybe the international community would have taken some action, they would have imposed sanctions, Yeah, the world of 2020 was a very different world from 2020 to the one we live in now. So I left, and little did I know that was going to be it.
Wow.
So that was November 2020. So December 2020, I was there. More of us started also leaving. So there was a small community of us who were in Ghana. People who were involved in those protests. January 2021, February 2021, no change. At this point, I've all the money I left Nigeria with, I've kind of run through my savings and I'm starting to think, what am I actually going to do? I'm not doing my copywriting stuff anymore. I'm not really doing much. I'm just sort of waiting to see what's going to happen. And I'm just on Twitter every day, waiting for the European and American cavalry to ride in and announce that they've imposed sanctions on Muhammadu Buhari. Of course they didn't. In fact, they welcomed him to London literally the month after. And at the time, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Why are these people not doing something? You are the protectors of democracy and whatnot. This is the most anti-democratic thing this guy could possibly do. People have died. What is going on? And I think it was March 2021. Just at that point when I'm thinking, okay, so I don't know what I'm even going to do at all. I'm completely lost at this point. I'm broke, dead broke as well. I'm just completely confused. I mean, Ghana is my second home because I've been in and out since I was a child. Okay. But it's, at that point, was still not a place where I was equipped to survive for the long term. So what am I going to do? And then again, I guess the universe, as it does, found a way for me to, get a way out. So, if you recall, during the pandemic, everyone in Edo was opening a Substack. Everyone was opening a Substack. I had even opened one and I did nothing with it. I didn't publish it. In fact, the name I gave to it was an ironic name. I called it Another Boring Generic Newsletter. Yeah. That was literally the name I gave it. And for some reason, because I had a lot of traction on social media, people had started signing up to it, even though it literally had no branding, nothing. And I gave it an ironic name. Wow. People just started signing up. So that was like late 2020. So 2021, March, I then came across this thing. I think someone tagged me on Twitter or something and said, Substack they're doing a program where they're looking for 12 writers and journalists from around the world. And they want to fund them for 1 year to write local stories, basically. Local journalism. So I put in an application because,
why not?
If I do. They only selected one person from the whole of Africa, and that one person turned out to be me. I'll also mention that there was a catch. There's always a catch. Location-based pay.
Location-based pay.
So the Americans and the Europeans who were on the same cohorts, they got paid like $75,000. Like that was their funding for 1 year. I got 30,000.
Okay.
Because it's Africa.
So they were going with the minimum wage of your country, of the country that you're in.
I think they literally just said it's Africa. I give him less than half of what those ones have. I think that's what it was.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So that's kind of like how I dug myself out of not just the financial hole, but also the psychological hole I was in at the time, because I was genuinely confused. I didn't know what to do. It was like, what also contributed to that confusion was that the very last story that I ever did on Newswire, which was a story which is still quite personal to me. It was a story about a job seeker in Nigeria who had gone missing. And basically she was murdered. Right. She responded to what she thought was a job interview. It was actually some guy who was some sort of serial killer, ritual killer, whatever it was. And she got murdered. And I did what you would call a remote investigation. So I did some things that had never been done in Nigerian journalism before. I had access to a contact at the telco that the attacker used. So I think, I don't want to mention the telco's name. Yeah. But I had a contact behind the scenes who gave me access to the murderer's call logs, the numbers they've been calling, the duration of the call. The only thing I didn't get was the actual voice recording of the call. Wow. But I got everything else, which was, by the way, information I was not supposed to have, because this was an active, ongoing police investigation. And basically I did my own remote investigation, and I was able to use so in addition to call logs, the information that came from the telco was also stuff like cell tower locations and stuff. So I was literally able to geolocate this guy, and I was able to prove that at so and so date and at so and so time, this is where this person was. This is who he was talking to. It was a story that actually brought two new people into the case, because I identified them. That this person, that as soon as he killed this girl, the first number he called is this guy who happens to work for the government. And that this is where this guy was. This is where they met. I was able to prove that. You can Google the story. It's called Who Killed Inil Morin. Who Killed Inil Morin. Yeah, it's still on the Newswire website, actually. So that story, it kind of broke me psychologically a bit, because I've never, they will always tell journalists, don't get emotionally involved in your stories.
But this one did.
I always get emotionally involved in my stories, obviously. But this one was
on another level.
Like I felt really invested in it, because again, she was an orphan. Some context. She was an orphan. She had struggled through school. She was basically just your typical Nigerian, just trying to get by. She had been called up to do her youth service, and she just needed like a job in the interim to just keep herself going until she went for youth service, which you get paid for. And then she got murdered. She got murdered. And it was like, it just really stung.
Mm-hmm.
Can we not catch a break? Because like the memories of NSAS are still quite fresh in my mind. Because what NSAS was, in case like you're not entirely aware of this, it was basically a generation's attempt to assert itself. And then it got brutally slapped down. So there was a psychological injury, which I think all of us from those two generations, the Gen Z and the millennials, the younger millennials, but I'm not a younger millennial, but like the mid to younger millennials, there's a psychological injury which all of us still carry till today.
Is it almost the same as the Gen Z protests in 2024 for Kenya?
It's very similar, but I would say the psychological injury that we carry is worse because unlike in the Kenyans were able to show a lot more resistance.
Okay.
It felt like the first sign of real violence from the states, the whole thing crumbled. And then the violence from the state, like in Kenya, they would shoot a person today, shoot a person tomorrow. It was piecemeal. Imagine how the so-called Githurai massacre, right? Imagine the Githurai massacre scaled up to like a factor of 3. And then imagine this is the very first encounter with state violence. Imagine what that does to the group psyche.
Wow.
Because all of you are there thinking, okay, we're getting something going here. We're asserting ourselves. And some of us are even starting to think maybe this is going beyond just calling for an end to police brutality. Maybe we're also calling for the president to step down, as is our right to do. Right? And that is happening. And then the state does this one thing, like they take a hammer to a fly. Like they go from 0 to 100 immediately. And like it is so unnecessary and it's so gratuitous. To give you an idea of just how terrible it was, they were going around for the next couple of days. Hospitals in the area were hiding people, like survivors, because they were going around. Military and soldiers and police were going around to the hospitals in the Lekki and Victoria Island area. If they find someone that, like maybe there's a gunshot wound or something, they take the person away. A few hours later, they dump the body in front of the hospital. They're doing that for the next 2 or 3 days.
What's the death toll in total around?
The official death toll, that when they admitted death toll, is 99.
Okay.
It's multiples of that. But the admitted death toll is 99. Like the death toll admitted by the coroner, the Lagos State coroner, is 99. It's multiples of that, but we will never know how many, because we also heard from several eyewitness accounts that they were also getting rid of bodies. So they burnt some bodies. They did water burials for somebody. So there's a whole bunch of people who just went missing. Until today, nobody knows what happened to them. Wow. So we're all carrying that psychological injury around. And then this lady's story just somehow triggered me. Like, so a young person in this country really cannot catch any sort of break.
You can't catch any break.
And it really, really, really got to me. So that was the last ever story that I did on Newswire, actually. Partly because I felt like I needed the break psychologically, and partly because the reaction to the story, this was a recurring thing, but the reaction to the story made me feel like, you know what, maybe to an extent, you people don't even deserve me. Because one thing that I had started experiencing at the time, even though I didn't know why, was that I thought I was just doing great work, public interest work. It's for the greater good, it's for the general good. I'm not making any money out of this. There's literally nothing in this for me. I'm doing this because I want this place to be a better place. That's it. Why are you attacking me? I didn't understand at the time that there's a whole infrastructure of what they call journalism, which is basically US funded, that requires the status quo to remain in power. And that just by existing and by wielding influence, I was spoiling it. I was spoiling the game for some people. I didn't know that. I didn't know that there's millions of dollars that go into maintaining that information paucity in Nigeria's information space. And that money almost invariably comes from Washington, D.C. I didn't know any of this. All I knew was you guys are supposed to be journalists. For whatever reason, you are not doing your job or you're not doing it well enough. So I have decided to use my training to do the job that you won't do. So why are you getting hurt about it? Why are you constantly, there are industry WhatsApp groups and whatnot, which I was never a member of, but people will send me screenshots and they spend hours talking about me. Oh, he's not a real journalist. What he does isn't journalism. That was their favorite refrain. David Hundeyin is not a real journalist. What he does isn't journalism. He's a sensationalist. He's an alarmist. He's a conspiracy theorist. He's a lot of ists, right? So after that story, I kind of took a break for a while. And then the Substack thing came in and I was selected. And then I basically had the opportunity to set up my own platform for the first time. So what became West Africa Weekly?
West Africa Weekly.
That's how it came into existence. I literally needed a name for the Substack newsletter. And I thought, okay, I want this to be weekly. And since it's a local news project, I want it to be focused on Nigeria, but, I'm not in Nigeria right now, I'm in Ghana. So
West Africa.
Let's make it West Africa. That's literally where the name came from. So that's how West Africa Weekly became a thing. And that was where I took that concept of storified investigative journalism and I made it a brand.
That's how I came to know your work.
Yeah. So all the major stories that you know me for, the Flutterwave investigation, that's probably where you saw me for the first time, because that was where I went from the level of notoriety I had to an international level of notoriety, which would later end up almost, costing me my life. But anyway, that's a story. We'll get to that.
So, wow. So tell me, with all those things, do you miss Nigeria, and do you see with the way politics is going in Nigeria, do you see yourself coming back home?
With the way politics is going right now, no. Because all I see is a continuation of the status quo. There is no real opposition in Nigeria. There are people who call themselves opposition groups. There's an opposition coalition. But as far as I'm concerned, everyone is basically playing a scripted role, and this scripted role that the opposition has is to lose.
Okay.
Because in 2023, right, when I thought that based on all this work that I've done, based on these exposés that I've put into the public domain, based on how I've made it clear that Bola Tinubu should absolutely not in 1,000 years be allowed to go anywhere near the presidency of Africa's most populous country, based on all, and I went to absurd extents. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only Nigerian journalist dead or alive who has sued the US government to gain access to records about a Nigerian politician.
Oh, okay.
Like 5 different US government agencies. So the FBI, the State Department, the IRS, the, the DOJ, the US Attorney's Office, and the CIA.
Wow. I
sued all of them.
The big guns.
Yeah, in federal FOIA court, that you've not honored my freedom of information request. You have to produce what records you have on this person. Because you have admitted that you have records on this person. The FBI admitted we have close to 70,000 pages of records about him, that if we refine it, we have 2,500 pages of relevant records about this guy. Why does the FBI have 2,500 pages of investigative records on somebody that wants to be my president? What were they investigating about this person?
There's something.
And then the IRS has this whole, affidavit on public record where they state publicly, we seized $500,000 from this guy's bank accounts being the proceeds of drug trafficking. I mean, it's so obvious what is going on here. It's so obvious. Not only do you know exactly who this guy is and what he has been doing, but you are protecting him.
Oh. So why are they protecting you?
That is the question. And that's when my entire frame for understanding the world started to shift in 2023, because that was when I started to understand that these Muzungu institutions that we've been taught to look up to, or we've been taught to think of as the democratic gold standard, the people who work for the benefit of the greater good and who know what they're doing and all of that stuff. That's not the case at all. that these people have some interest, whatever that interest is, in protecting this person so that he became Nigeria's president. Meanwhile, I know very well that this person should be nowhere near that seat. And I know that if this person becomes president, then the suffering of the last 8 years is going to be doubled. I've seen what happened in 2015 when my country fell off a cliff. And by the way, I was affected too. You know, it wasn't just a thing that I saw happen to other people. I was also affected. Maybe not to the same extent as them, but if 2015 had gone a different way, I wouldn't be sitting here with you right now. So, back then there was something called, the Local Content Act. So it was a thing in the Nigerian oil industry where instead of just bringing in expatriates to do all sorts of skilled jobs, the government was requiring everyone in the oil industry, both oil majors and contractors, to train locals to do certain jobs. And I was about to become a beneficiary of that. So there was a new entrant to the helicopter space. It was called Atlantic Aviation, which was affiliated with CHC, the Canadian Helicopter Corporation. And they were going to be doing oil lifting for some of the oil companies. So instead of just hiring a bunch of white people to come and fly the helicopters as they normally would, based on this government initiative, they were required to open a cadet pilot program. They said they wanted 12 people. They got like 6,000 applications and whatnot. The process of filtering it down was brutal, right? But I went through all the stages. I was one of the 12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So somewhere in Lagos, in the NCAA, that's Civil Aviation Authority, I have an NCAA medical license because I did my medical, my aviation medical. I got measured for my pilot's uniform and everything. As soon as the new guy came into power, all of that disappeared because the first thing he did was the people he considered to be his people,
his cronies,
not just his cronies, his ethnic affiliation. He made sure that any kind of contracts in Nigeria's oil industry. So there's an organization in the oil industry called NAPIMS. They are like a regulator that oversees any contract in the oil industry, whether it's an oil lifting contract, whether it's a transport contract, whatever it is, you can't sign a piece of paper without NAPIMS say so.
What about the NNPC?
No, the NNPC is a state oil company.
State oil company.
So NAPIMS is the regulator within the space. And what he simply did was he just made it such that the guy he puts in charge of NAPIMS, if your name is not Abubakar or Ahmed or Yerima or Ruf, you're not getting it. Simple as that. And those oil lifting contracts that Atlantic Aviation was supposed to get, they didn't get. And that's it. That's how my aviation dream died. And that's how I remained in marketing.
Tribalism.
Yeah. They had asked us to submit our passports. We're going to go to Florida to the Bristol Academy for our basic pilot training. And then it just didn't happen. So 2015 wasn't just like a hypothetical thing that people were, I was affected as well. So I'm thinking now that I have gone through all this trouble to make sure that my people had the information that they needed to have in 2023. And to be fair to them, they actually used that information because there is nobody who genuinely believes that this guy actually won that election. Even he himself doesn't believe it. He knows he didn't win it or come close to it. But he's been declared winner by hook or by crook. Now there's a legal challenge ongoing. I need these documents that conclusively, beyond any threshold of any kind of doubt, however reasonable or unreasonable, proves that this guy is a character that is unfit for public office. This person is a drug dealer. This person should be nowhere near that. And the US State Department is protecting this guy. Why are they doing that?
That's a big question.
You know, the DEA, the same DEA, you know, we watched Narcos on Netflix and the DEA that claims that they fought drug trafficking. Why are they protecting a drug trafficker? And the DOJ is playing, you know, the kind of courtroom gamesmanship you would expect from a Nigerian courtroom. You're seeing this in US federal courts and you're like, oh, okay, so the world didn't work the way I thought it did then. Because like when you can see the lawyer working for the US government blatantly lying in court, like in writing, blatantly lying, and then the judge is playing dumb. And you're like, I've seen this before, but I saw it in Nigeria. I did, so this happens at this level too. Okay, so the world that I thought existed was a make-believe place. It was a construct that existed inside my head. Because in real life, this is who these people actually are. And they're clearly protecting this guy. I mean, when he was declared winner, who was the first head of state on the planet to send a congratulatory social media post? The very first, before even any African head of state. Who was the first? It was Rishi Sunak, the British Prime Minister.
British Prime Minister at that time. Yes. Oh.
Why would the British Prime Minister be the first head of state in the world to congratulate an illegitimate president? What happened there?
Wow.
So, and then I think something else there were a number of things that I saw in 2023. Something else that I noticed that made my frame of reality sort of completely break and shatter was, I remember it was May 2023. I was invited to London to speak at a press conference which the opposition had organized. It was meant to be like a big global press conference. All the big media houses were supposed to be there. BBC, ITV, Sky, CNN, everybody. Right? It was supposed to hold at Chatham House. That's the International Institute of International Affairs, whatever it's called, at Leicester Square in London, or King George Square, whatever it's called. First of all, Chatham House cancelled.
Okay.
Right. Like they had agreed. And then, so the organizers had sent an initial list of people who are going to appear. Chatham House had agreed. Then they invited me and I agreed. So they then sent a supplementary list. Okay, these people are also going to appear, and Chatham House pulled out. And then all the major, so I showed up on the day. So we ended up changing the venue to a place called the ILEC Conference Center in West London. We showed up on the day, and all the major news platforms that had said that they were going to show up, BBC, Sky, within a 24-hour period, all of them one by one pulled out, one by one, within 24 hours, like less than 48 hours to the date. Within 24 hours, each of them pulled out. And at the time, I remember thinking, this is a hell of a coincidence. What is going on here? And then it came out, it emerged a few months later that wasn't just some random coincidence that happened. There was a D notice. Now, if you don't know what a D notice is, it's a notice that is passed from the British government to the editors of media establishments, strongly advising them not to cover a particular topic or not to publish a particular story. So on paper, it says it's non-binding. You are not required to do it, but you are strongly advised. And I was thinking, wait. I'm appearing at a press conference in London, and these people put a D notice on the press conference. What happened to your freedom of press that you can never shut up about? You have freedom of press. You want to use BBC Media Action to train Nigerian journalists all the time. They're constantly in Nigeria doing one training on the other. They're there right now, right? As we're recording this, they're there right now. You are training journalists, you're training radio professionals and TV, but your so-called bastion of free media at home in London, Fleet Street, I didn't even know what a D notice was at the time. And it just made my entire sense of reality just completely invert itself. Because then I realized everything I thought I knew, I didn't know. And the way I thought the world worked, it didn't work that way at all. And then what was then like the final, like, slap in the face for me was, June that year, 2023. So this guy had just over a month in office. Then there was a coup in Niger.
Okay.
And next thing I know, this guy is trying to send the Nigerian military into Niger. I'm like, huh? What? Like, from where to where? Like, Nigeria has had like 7 military coups in its existence. Nobody has ever put troops on Nigerian soil because of a coup. What business was Nigeria? And then it became clear that this idea wasn't his. It wasn't his decision.
It was whose decision?
It's one Emmanuel Macron in Paris.
Okay.
Who decided that Niger must not be allowed to leave the French sphere of influence in West Africa, and that the Nigerian military should be used as the enforcer. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so if that is the case, then isn't that exactly what these Pan-Africanist people have been talking about when they say that African leaders are used as proxies and they're not really working for African people and they're not really in power. They're not really, they've been installed by, is this not what that is? Am I not seeing a live example of this?
That's what we've been saying for years, guys.
Because I used to be one of those people that when I would hear that kind of thing, I'd say it's a conspiracy theory.
Oh, really?
I used to be one of them.
So you used to watch people like me like, come on.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. I used to be one of those people. In fact, I think it's still on YouTube. I don't know if it's been taken down. The first TED Talk, either first or the second TED Talk I ever delivered. I think this was sometime in 2020, either 21 or 22. When I was at the peak of that, peak
of your power,
my personal agency era.
Yeah.
Like I'm overdosed on personal agency. I'm taking responsibility. I'm not blaming anyone, blah, blah, blah. I did a TED Talk where I basically said something to the effect of Africans need to stop belly aching about who does or doesn't want their resources. African resources are not that important. Resources are everywhere in the world. And that basically Africans should go and learn how to code. Basically, like that's not exactly what I said, but long and short, that's basically what I was saying. Stop belly aching about who may or may not be leaning their imperial weight on Africa, and basically get to work. You don't have any excuse. Yeah, stop. What's that famous phrase? Stop blaming it on the white man. Take responsibility. I used to be one of those people. 100%. And this is happening in front of my eyes. And I'm there with my personal agency thinking, no way. And then someone in the chain of command leaks the attack instructions to me, because bear in mind, this was a secret operation.
Okay.
Initially, the Nigerian public did not know that this was actually happening. It was a secret operation. How I knew was that someone in the chain of command leaked the attack instructions to me, like the actual document from the defense headquarters, which is a very, very classified document. Which just having it is a serious offense. And guess what I do with my personal agency? I go post it on Twitter.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking, personal agency. I'm going to stop this from happening. I'm not going to sit here and belly ache and blame France. Instead, I'm going to stop it from happening. Right? I don't know if what I did is entirely responsible for stopping it from happening. I know they were very, very, very upset about it when it got to the public domain, and they started accusing me of treason. And then what had happened was that he had tried to deploy the military into Niger without Senate approval, which is against the law.
Almost the same thing with the Benin coup the other day.
Yeah, it's exactly what he did, but it's just that he was unsuccessful the first time around.
Okay.
So he tried to deploy without Senate approval, which is against the law. And after I did that expose or whatever, then the Senate basically said, no, you can't deploy the military. And so I don't know if I was entirely responsible for it or how much of a role I played, but I know I played a role and I paid a very heavy price for it, because in my mind, after the Senate said no, I'm thinking, okay, job done. Moving on. I've proved to myself that whether there is an element of neocolonialism here or not, personal agency, Africans taking responsibility, stopped it from happening. I was in Ghana, obviously. Next thing I know, they sent a letter to the Ghanaian government asking the Ghanaian government to basically hand me over, claiming that I've committed treason and I have compromised an ECOWAS security operation, because technically they claimed that it was ECOWAS that wanted to stage the invasion, not Nigeria. So by sabotaging an ECOWAS security operation, and obviously Ghana is part of ECOWAS, that means that Ghana should hand me over.
Ooh, okay.
And I was in Ghana. And then they don't only send a letter, they then dispatch a jet. That's the National Intelligence Agency of Nigeria, under the leadership of a guy called Ahmed Rufai Abubakar. He's been fired now. But he dispatched a jet to Accra. And they were literally looking for me. Fortunately, sometimes when you are, I think the people who are in these spaces or who are in these rooms where these things are being discussed, they know when you mean well, but you just don't know anything. They know.
So somebody tipped you.
Somebody tipped me off.
Okay.
A lot of the time you have friends that you don't know you had. And the reason you have those friends is that they are just looking at you and thinking, oh, you poor fool. Mm-hmm. You really have no idea, do you? And he tipped me off, and literally, like, I had hours to spare to get the hell out of Ghana at that time. Wow. So there was really nowhere to go. I didn't have a valid UK visa, so I couldn't go so I just needed to get out of West Africa because I felt like if I'm within the ECOWAS zone right now, I'm in trouble. Mm-hmm. So, I went by road to Togo because Ghana is right next to Togo. Mm-hmm. I've told this story. This story is actually in my book. So I spent like 3 nights. So I booked, back then you needed an ETA to travel to Kenya. Because Kenya was the only place that I thought it's far enough away from West Africa. Nobody really knows me here like that. So I can just come here and lay low for a while. So I applied for a Kenyan ETA. I got it within 15 minutes, which was like borderline miraculous.
Wow.
But that was on a Sunday. The next, early Sunday morning, like 1 a.m. The next available flight was on a Wednesday. It was Ethiopian Airlines. So it was Lomé to Addis to Nairobi. So I was there in that was some dingy ass motel room in Lomé. Just literally, did not sleep for 3 days. Just watching the clock tick. And then I had been advised that I should maintain my social media facade as though I was still in Ghana.
Oh.
So I was posting vacation pictures of myself at Adomi Bridge. Meanwhile, I was in another country.
Because I was almost asking you, like, did you switch off your phone to?
I was using a VPN. And as soon as I crossed the border from Ghana, I ditched my Ghanaian SIM.
Okay.
In case it was being monitored, which it definitely was. So I tried to take some precautions. But even then, there's no such thing as privacy. There's no such thing as absolute, online security. So I was just there, just hoping that I don't end up as roadkill. And then finally the day of the flight comes, the morning of the flight comes, I get to the airport, I clear the immigration check and everything. And then just at the point where you get to the place where you take off your shoes and everything, I was literally walking past the guy with like a computer screen, and I saw like my picture and my details. I was clearly on a watch list, right? And he called me back, and I'm thinking, okay, this is it.
It's over.
I'm done here. And then someone else, I don't know whether it's a supervisor or something, goes and has a word with him in his ear. And he's like, go. Till today, I don't know what that was. I don't know what it is that he told him.
But what can you insinuate? Like, if you can guess, what was that?
If I'm going to guess, I think it's somebody who was sympathetic to me and who had the power to act like they didn't see me. That's what I think it was. I can't prove it.
Okay.
I can't prove it.
Wow.
So I got on the flight, and I think I didn't sleep until we had, because you have to, from Ghana, you have to fly across Togo. Mm-hmm. From Togo, you have to fly across Benin, then Nigeria, then Cameroon. I don't think my eyes blinked until we crossed into Cameroonian airspace. That, okay, even if the plane goes down here, I go down in Cameroon, which is not in ECOWAS. So,
really? Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I have a bit of a chance here. That's how I got to Kenya, and I tried to lay low for a bit. A few weeks in Kenya, next thing I know, I don't know what to call him, my mentor in Ghana is a guy called Anas. I don't know if you heard of him. This journalist who wears he wears a mask on his face. So like nobody ever sees his real face.
Oh, I don't think so.
Anas Arameyaw Anas.
I don't think so.
Okay, he's like.
But I've seen a podcaster wearing a mask. I don't know if
he might be the one. He's like my big brother, because
okay,
during the time when I did the Tinubu story and there were noises about my life being in danger or whatnot, he took me under his protection.
Wow.
I was living in a safe house.
Wow.
His safe house. So he runs an organization called the Whistleblowers and Journalists Safety International Center. Mm-hmm. They operate a network of safe houses across Africa. So I was there for a while, for months. So he basically kept me alive. during a very testing time. So Anas, I was in Nairobi, here in Nairobi. Anas calls me and he's like, what did you do? I'm like, what do you mean? What did I do? What's going on? And he's like, he's just come out of a meeting with the vice president and they're about to cancel your Ghanaian passport. I'm like, what? And he's like, so like, then I have to go do a video appeal. You might have seen it because I put out the video on Twitter then in 2023. Put out the video appeal appealing to the Ghanaian president.
Oh, I saw that. I saw
not to revoke my passport.
It was a Kufuor at that
yes,
time.
exactly.
Wow.
You know, and then a few weeks after that, I then get word from a different person within the security architecture that they know you're in Kenya and they've sent people there to look for you. So then at that time, the UN, the 54th session of the UN Human Rights Council they were sitting in Geneva. So a guy, funny enough, a Catholic priest, you know, which was ironic for me being that I'm not a Christian, but a guy called, I'm not going to mention his name, but he's a Catholic priest and he ran an organization called Vivat International, who was supposed to speak on the floor of the UN Human Rights Council. So he gave me his space.
Okay. Wow.
So I was able to record a video message. I was staying at some dingy ass little bed-sitter apartment at Ngong Road. I think it's called Racecourse Gardens.
Okay.
One tiny place, B1 or something. I was there for weeks. That was where I recorded that video.
Wow.
So just based on the sheer amount of noise that those things made and the amount of potential embarrassment that it would have caused for whoever was coming after me, they kind of stepped back for a while. Right? Which is probably why I'm still here today.
Okay.
Right. So it was in the middle of all these experiences that I was realizing that there is no international community. There is no international law. There is no, there are no adults in the room. The world you thought you lived in doesn't exist. Because what is actually happening is that you simply have strong countries and weaker countries, and the strong are imposing their will on the weak. The strong, in this case being France, had simply said that it is their manifest destiny to exploit the weaker Francophone countries. And when one of these weaker countries decided to assert itself in its independence, it simply used another weak country, Nigeria, or tried to use it as a proxy to whip it back into line. And it was such a jarring realization for me because one of the founding myths of the mindset I used to have was that African countries are sovereign. That was one of my foundational myths, that African countries are sovereign. So whatever is happening in an African country was decided by the government of that country. So if things are not going well here, it's because the government is corrupt.
Yeah.
It's because there are bad people in government. It's because they're making bad decisions. Right? So in hindsight, it was such a doe-eyed and, fundamentally stupid view of how the world works. The idea that there are some countries that are just populated by buffoons and all they do is just make poor decisions. And that's all. And then there are some other countries that are populated by smart people and the smart people are always in power and they always make smart decisions. And that's why some countries are better off. That's why some countries are poor. And that the way to make a poor country better off is to ensure that the smart people get access to power. Such a simplistic and doe-eyed
of looking at
impression
Africa.
Of how things actually work. And it was those 3 to 4 months in Nairobi in 2023 that completely broke my illusions about how the world worked. And then I had to start doing what I consider to be basic reading that I should have done when I was 12 years old. So reading about stuff like, for example, Kwame Nkrumah's book,
was it The Neocolonialism?
The last stage of imperialism.
Beautiful book.
I had never read it up until that point.
Beautiful.
How Europe underdeveloped Africa. I had spoken about it in terms of mockery without having actually read it.
Wow.
That was the first time I actually read that book. Das Kapital. Just stuff that whether you agree with it or not, it's stuff that it should be basic required reading as far as I'm concerned. If you consider yourself to have had a rounded education, then that means that even the things that you ideologically disagree with, you even need to understand what those things are. And those 4 months were when I realized I had been very poorly educated.
Wow.
I had an expensive education, but it was still a very poor education. Just because a lot of money was spent on it and you learned a lot of stuff that some people wanted you to know, doesn't mean you're educated. You know, there was a video I saw of, I think his name is Adam Wolf. He's an American economist, where he was making a similar point to this. He said that he has an Ivy League education. He studied economics at Yale. He got a master's. He got a PhD in economics in Ivy League. And at no point throughout his bachelor's degree, his master's degree, his research degree, at no point was he required to read Karl Marx.
Okay.
So basically, you are overeducated in half of what you need to know. And the other half is completely, entirely left out of what you call an education. So you are not educated at all. And that was the case with me. It was 2023 that made me fundamentally reassess everything.
Okay.
The existence of imperialism as a material fact of life in Africa. Believe it or not, up until that point, I had found it easy to convince myself that these things are just somehow conspiracy theories. That what is in front of you is all that there is, and nothing more. So if a country is constantly taking out IMF loans, it's because that country is being run by people who are not financially prudent, and it's its choice to take out IMF loans. And if you don't want to take out IMF loans, then you can just say no.
Yeah. Well,
which is absolute nonsense. That's not the case at all.
Yeah.
But again, that was what the education that I had allowed me to know.
That's what he taught you.
It was 2023, and I credit my time here specifically with that. That was where a lot of things shifted for me. It's like ideologically, and I understood for the first time that I understood a lot of things. I understood that what I witnessed in 2015 wasn't an unfortunate accident, and it wasn't an Obama project. It's just US imperialism. Whether it was Obama, whether it was this bottle of water that was US president, it would have been the same. They would have done the same thing. Because you had a rising African country that was on the cusp of an industrial breakout. And that fundamentally challenges the place, the role that has been set for Africa in the imperial global economy. Africa is supposed to be supplier of cheap raw materials, nothing more. So when you are the world's third fastest growing economy, you are developing industrial policy, you're starting to assemble machinery, you're starting to do things that are not part of that plan. And then you are geopolitically partnering yourself with China, which is building infrastructure. That is challenging the role that has been set for Africa. Because Western prosperity depends on African poverty. African poverty is not an unintended consequence of Western imperialism. It's a central defining feature of it. Right? These are things I did not know before, but I started to understand very clearly and understand for the first time the world around me in 2023. I understood for the first time that no amount of investigative journalism, no matter how engaging, no matter how many millions of people read it, no matter how impactful I thought it was, no amount of investigative journalism was ever going to change the material reality of Nigeria.
Wow.
It simply wasn't. It wasn't going to change who was going to be announced as president, because that decision wasn't made in Nigeria. The decision for Bola Tinubu to become president wasn't a decision that was made by Nigerians, and Nigerians had no say in it. Simple as that. Because they are not the ones who put him in power. So the election it's a ritual that you have to pass through so that the gods of democracy, the Western self-appointed gods of democracy, can tick boxes on their flip charts and call it democratically elected leadership, right? They know very well that Bola Tinubu did not win any election in Nigeria. They know that better than I do.
Yeah.
But he had to go through that ritual so that, as they say at PwC or KPMG, you are paper ready, right? You have the paper trail to prove that X or Y happened, whether X or Y actually happened. It's a term that we picked up in consulting. I briefly worked in consulting, by the way.
Okay.
So it's a term you pick up where maybe you're doing you're on site with the client and you have a bunch of expenses and stuff. They will tell you that there must be a receipt for everything. You don't care how you obtain the receipt. They will tell you to forge a receipt, but they'll just tell you, make sure there's a receipt for everything. So like the client is asking, what am I spending such and such and such on? Why did I get charged for this? They can show them what the expense was for. It's a thing they do in the NGO space as well. They create receipts for everything, whether those things existed or not. You are paper ready. That's what democracy is in Africa. It's a big box checking exercise. The real decisions are made in DC and Paris.
Of course.
You know, the African voters are not the ones who put anybody in power. So Peter Obi or whoever might have won an election in 2023. He was never going to be president of Nigeria. It's a recurring motif across the continent. So whether it's Uganda, no matter how much, whether it's Kizza Besigye or Bobby Wine or whoever, you know, the decisions have been made in the places they have been made. And those places are not in Africa.
Unless you have a leader who is firm and going there to just revolutionize everything.
And that leader is not, so that's what the AES represents in isolation. It's not just leader, one person that tries to do that is just going to end up dead. There are systems that they're putting in place behind the potential for wider. That's the reason Ibrahim Traoré is political revolution.
Okay,
why? Because there's a popular revolution by just existing. If it was just Ibrahim Traoré, he wouldn't have lasted 6 months.
Let's speak about him briefly. What do you think about AES, him, Goïta and Tchiani forming their own, alliance, economically, politically, socially? And, what do you think about Traoré, as a leader and as an inspiration to Africa?
First of all, I'll say that, it's not Traoré. It's the 3 countries.
Oh, yes.
Because I've noticed that because Burkina Faso, I guess, is the most media savvy of the 3 countries.
Yeah.
And its transformation is the most visually eye-catching. So people often reduce what's happening in the AES to Burkina Faso or Ibrahim Traoré. That's, I think, missing the mark, entirely. Nothing that is happening in Burkina Faso would have been possible without the AES. The AES is the real story here, because what that has done is basically what the OAU, the original African Union, was supposed to do.
Yes.
That's what organizations like ECOWAS were supposed to do. Just basic integration, for example. There are no roaming charges across the AES.
Wow.
Right. That sounds simple enough, but even here in the EAC, there are roaming charges. I was in Dar es Salaam a couple of days ago and I flew into Nairobi. My SIM didn't work. Why should Kenya and Tanzania have completely different financial systems and currencies, completely different mobile
networks
that don't interconnect, properly? Everything is so siloed away from each other. That's what the AES is revolutionizing. They are showing that all these divisions that somebody has convinced us need to be there, that those things, they're myths. There's no reason why a group of African countries cannot come together and create shared infrastructure. There's no reason why they cannot properly streamline free movement, for example. So in ECOWAS or in the EAC, they'll claim to have free movement. I think you and I know that's not true. You might have free movement in the EAC, but I've seen it happen a number of times to a lot of people that I know, EAC citizens. If, for example, you're trying to fly from Nairobi with a Ugandan passport, they might tell you to go back to Uganda and fly from there instead. That's a thing that happens. They're both EAC members, but they've not sorted out their free movement yet. In ECOWAS, which claims to have free movement, if you take your Nigerian passport to Cote d'Ivoire or Gambia, you might have serious problems there.
But AES have actualized it.
They might even deport you. But it's a free movement area. ECOWAS, which claims to be a customs union, blah, blah, blah. It's supposed to eventually supposed to become a monetary union. This was said in 1975 when they were formed. As of 2026, there's no sign of the monetary union, and each of them has tariffs against each other.
So there's beef inside ECOWAS.
Of course. And then here comes the AES, and you're saying for the first time that all of this is nonsense and doesn't need to exist. Because they're actually doing it. They're not talking about it, they're doing it. It's real, it's happening. So the idea, for example, of linking the 3 AES capitals by rail, which is such a radical departure from the sort of colonial rail infrastructure that typically exists across Africa, whose only purpose is to ship extracted stuff from inland to the port.
Yes.
Right. Instead, you are saying let's connect 3 major African population centers so people can trade within them. There's no ports there. There's no exports. It's just people trading. Right. And they're showing that it's possible because they're doing it. Something I found very interesting. I think this was at the start of January or end of December. There was an announcement that was made that in Burkina Faso, they're going to be constructing the country's first proper highway. Like, the way you have the Thika superhighway here. They do 60 plus years of independence, they don't have an expressway in Burkina Faso. And they're building their first expressway between the 2 major cities, Ouagadougou and Bobo Dioulasso. It's about 320 kilometers. And it's going to be 4 lanes each way, 4 lanes going, 4 lanes coming, right?
Okay.
And in about 21 days since the announcement was made, they've already cleared 70% of the entire right of way.
Wow.
Like, this is before the earthwork started and everything. But I'm saying, like, this was just grassland and bush and vegetation. Now, the actual right of way has actually been cleared. 70% of it in 20 days. That normally would take at least a year. At least a year. And then the actual road building project could take another 10, 15, 20 years easily. Well, what you're going to find out is that within 18 months, they're going to complete this project.
Wow.
So what that is going to do, and why I'm very excited about the AES, is that in the next 5 to 6 years, we won't be talking about its potential anymore. People are going to be moving there. People are going to be voting with their feet because people are going to be seeing a better life.
Yes.
Like, in practice, people in West Africa, I mean, maybe it's a bit far from East Africa, but people are going to be voting with their feet. It's going to be unignorable. And from a political perspective, the countries that are still hostile toward the AES will have to either explain to their citizens why these guys can have nice things while we can't, or the entire governance system is going to unravel. So the likes of Cote d'Ivoire and Nigeria, which are like the 2 major offenders, by the time, say, Niger, which has been Nigeria's poor cousin since forever, by the time Nigerians, there's a stereotype in Nigeria that if you see someone from Niger, it's probably a beggar, he's there to beg, right?
It'll change now.
By the time that perception starts to change, because Nigerians start having nice things, and the Nigerians start to migrate to Niger, there's going to be a big problem. And that's what I want to see. By the time Ivorians, because Burkina Faso has always been the poor cousin of Cote d'Ivoire since forever. By the time Ivorians start having a lower quality of life
they start
than
moving
Burkinabes, there's going to be a problem. So that's what the AES represents to me. It's not just the infrastructure that is being built or the systems that they're putting in place. It's the potential for wider political revolution that they are creating by just existing.
Okay.
Because when they started out, the general reaction to them was, who cares? This isn't going to last long. You people are a bunch of poor people. What can you do? You don't even have access to the sea, But in the space of 3 years, the things that they said couldn't be done are being done. The regional financial integration, it's happening.
It's happening.
The telecoms integration has happened. It has already happened. The investment in healthcare and transport infrastructure is happening. We're seeing it with our two eyes. The
tomato processing plants.
Then that's, people often focus on tomato processing plants and all this. Like, there are much more fundamental things being done, even in Burkina Faso. So, for example, the fact that is now, I believe, the first country in West Africa to be data sovereign. It has the ability to manage and store all of its own citizens' data in country.
In their servers.
Wow. They now have that capacity. Because the rest of us, even here in Kenya, we're all living on US infrastructure.
Yeah. AWS, Google, whatever.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're all living on US infrastructure. My website is, I call it my website, but it's really Jeff Bezos' website.
Yeah. AWS.
Because the day he decides, for whatever reason, it's gone.
I never knew. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So, that is what the AES represents to me. It represents sovereignty in a way that people can finally understand why it's important. And sovereignty is not just rhetoric from the mouth of Thomas Sankara or something, because that's another weapon that has been used against the development of the right kind of consciousness within African populations, is that it's often presented as though, these are old ideas, outdated ideas, and these things didn't work, and there's a bunch of people who like to wear their red berets and talk about imperialism. Like, there's a way of making it sound so ridiculous.
So archaic. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
And it worked on me.
Yeah.
So I know it works. But what these guys are doing is completely changing the face of that. They're changing the narrative. That's what I'm excited about.
I want to understand
I'm not saying
Nigerian
that
leadership
Sani Abacha is
before we go to insecurity.
I don't think they're
oil and all that. But it's not your worst. If you look at
absolutely not.
First of all,
not even in the bottom.
Who is your worst and best president in Nigeria? Worst and best president in Nigeria.
Very controversial. My worst. Very controversial. My worst is Ibrahim Babangida.
I've heard of him.
The reason is my worst is that he ranks even above Tinubu for being my worst. And the reason is that it was under his tenure that structural adjustment first became a thing. IMF imposed structural adjustment. And that wasn't just an economic project. It wasn't just the economic debasement of Nigeria. It led to so many other outcomes that we're witnessing now. So, for example, it was under Babangida that, for the first time, foreign ownership of Nigerian media was permitted. And in the 40 plus years since then, foreign money, American money, has poured into Nigeria's information space and has made a lot of Nigerians think that they are deputy Americans. And that has created problems for everybody. So even the concept of sovereignty doesn't make sense to many Nigerians now, because many Nigerians do not know that they are Africans. They do not. Many Nigerians think that they are assistant Westerners.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, like, to many Nigerians, if you say you are anti-West, you have said something wrong. Many Nigerians genuinely do not know that they are not part of the West. They genuinely, and I'm not being sarcastic when I say this, they genuinely do not know. They genuinely believe that, hey, we speak the same English, we worship the same Christian God, we wear the same Savile Row suits, they put on all these affectations of being what they're not, and they genuinely believe that they're both aligned. Meanwhile, as I always like to say, half jokingly, you're a monkey in a suit. They don't know that. And you can trace that back to Ibrahim Babangida. Because it was under him that not just the economic, but the cultural
shift.
What's the word I'm looking for? Terraforming of Nigerian society. That was when it really kicked off. And it's prior to Babangida, the concept of African pride was still a thing that was in the popular consciousness in Nigeria. The understanding of the world being a bigger place than Nigeria was a thing. Prior to Babangida, Nigeria used to have a reputation for being a country that supported and funded a bunch of African liberation movements, for example, a bunch of them. Whether it's South Africa, Mozambique, Namibia, Nigeria was involved in all of those things once upon a time. Babangida comes in and his government shrinks Nigeria's foreign policy, shrinks Nigeria's public space in such a way that the average Nigerian now doesn't really understand that there's a world outside Nigeria. That Nigeria exists within a wider geopolitical context. So if you're now in 2026 trying to explain to Nigerians that the war in Ukraine, for example, has direct implications for you, and it doesn't make sense. They can't perceive of it because their world begins at Libya and ends at Sebe, the northern and southern borders. That's it. So you would, I don't know how many Nigerians you've met, but you will find if you meet with a number of Nigerians, you will find that they're not even visually familiar with what the rest of Africa looks like. They are not visually acquainted with what the rest of Africa looks like. They think that the rest of Africa looks like Nigeria. It doesn't at all. But they don't know that.
Wow.
You know, you might think that you've met a lot of well-traveled Nigerians, or there's a large Nigerian diaspora.
Yeah.
There's a large Nigerian diaspora with an asterisk. And the asterisk is that, let me ask you a question. Can you guess what the total percentage of Nigeria's population is that travels internationally every year?
Well, travels or like goes out there and
that has ever left Nigeria's borders.
Left, period. Because it has the highest emigration rate. I would think it's about 50%.
2%. 2%.
Wow.
2% of 230 million is...
That's, do my quick math.
4.6 million. That's more than the population of some countries. So if there are 4.6 million Nigerians who travel or who have traveled, those are the people you meet. So those are the people who give you the impression that Nigerians know a thing or two.
Wow.
The vast majority of Nigeria is insular, it's uneducated, it's trapped. So the Nigerians like me that you meet, we are statistical outliers. We are not Nigerians in the real sense of it.
I get you. Wow.
Yeah. That's the reality. This can all be traced back to Ibrahim
Babangida.
It was under his administration that horrible morphing of Nigerian mental architecture began.
That's where it began.
Yeah. And then my best president...
Wait, before you go to the best, I thought you would say your worst is Sani Abacha.
No, actually, because... So... They are...
Because I've read horror stories about Sani Abacha.
See, that in itself is the problem, isn't it? You've read horror stories about him. Whose stories? And where did you read them? Because even I myself, it's been a very painful realization, but I myself have had to, over the past couple of years, I've had to admit to myself that almost everything I know, or I thought I knew about Sani Abacha, came from poison sources.
Okay.
So when you realize, for example, that the people who call themselves NADECO, National Democratic Coalition, who supposedly fought Sani Abacha for return to democracy and all, when you realize that NADECO itself was a CIA project, it was not an organic entity, it was a CIA project and it had foreign funding throughout its entire lifetime. It then makes you start to question everything else. What else do I know about or think I know about that 4-year period that came out of a poison deformation source? I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So the most common thing you've heard about Abacha is that he stole $4 billion, $5 billion, and that they're constantly returning parts of his loot from Switzerland. The part, for some reason, that is never, ever, ever mentioned is that under the Abacha regime, right? The Abacha, I shouldn't use the word regime. Under the Abacha government, Nigeria was under US economic sanctions and actually I was not permitted to take part in the global economy the way it is now. Several people close to him and who worked in that government have come out and said several times that the reason why sovereign funds were placed under personal names, like personal bank accounts in like tax havens and stuff, was because Nigeria was reduced to moving money around like a criminal just to be able to survive. Because Nigeria was not permitted to take part in the global financial system. That part is never mentioned. So a lot of that loot is actually sovereign funds that had to be moved using
private accounts,
using the architecture of money laundering.
Okay.
That's actually what was happening. Nigeria was under sanctions. And that this sanctioned money, they've still not returned the bulk of it. The bulk of these sanctioned funds are still sitting in God knows where. And they know exactly where they are, and they've still not returned the bulk of it.
So why?
Every couple of years, they will make an announcement they've sent a new tranche, $300 million tranche.
But why have we done? Why?
You have to ask them. And that's the point I'm making, that a lot of the information you hear is poisoned. You will also hear, for example, that, he was a killer, which he was.
Ken Saro-Wiwa.
His government went around murdering people, which they did.
Okay.
What you don't hear is who were those people? Because when you then realize that Sani Abacha and Muammar Gaddafi were basically the same person, absolute nutcases, but nutcases that had
a method.
Exactly.
A method to their madness.
Exactly. And that had the same goal in mind, which was attainment of some form of sovereignty. Okay. In the face of several odds. And that these people, including the name you mentioned, these people were all working for someone else.
Ken Saro-Wiwa.
Yeah. So, was Ken Saro-Wiwa a hero?
Well,
yeah, he was a great literary figure. He wrote some things.
Brilliant.
But you could also say that Wole Soyinka he won the Nobel Prize for literature or whatnot. But anybody who knows anything within the space will tell you that Wole Soyinka, at the very least, if he's not an active asset now, at the very least, has worked for the US government before. Like, this is a documented fact. So is he a hero?
But I mean, was it Trump revoked? Was it his passport or his visa or something?
Yeah, he threw a tantrum and Trump threw a tantrum back. Yeah, two silly old men. The point is, a lot of this information that comes from that era was we only had access to one side of the story from that era, and a lot of the information that was presented was coming through that poison lens. So the only story I ever heard growing up, Abacha was a murderous dictator. He stole Nigeria's money, and his wife and kids were like Uday and Saddam Hussein's children, Uday and Kwesi. That those are Abacha's kids, basically. Oh, those are the only stories you ever heard. You never hear, for example, that under Babangida, because Babangida was Abacha's direct predecessor.
Okay.
That the economy had so collapsed under Babangida that things actually stabilized under Abacha.
Under Abacha. Interesting.
You don't hear that part. That the real downfall took place under Ibrahim Babangida. And then, if you like, the consolidation happened under Abacha. So Abacha actually also took a lot of the blame for problems that were incubated by an administration that was basically working for the IMF. Because that's all Ibrahim Babangida did during his time.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that Sani Abacha is a good person. I don't think there are good people and bad people.
But he's not your worst.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Not even in the bottom three.
Wow.
Not even in the bottom
three. Okay, let's go to the best now.
My best. So the reason I'm hesitant about answering this question is that to say that someone is the best is to say that you approve of them. I don't think there's anyone that I really approve of. I don't think there's any one of them that has actually done enough.
Obasanjo?
This goes back to what I just said. So if you're looking at the economic numbers, clearly Obasanjo. Clearly. If that's all you're looking at, taking Nigeria from X to Y, Olusegun Obasanjo by like night and day.
Okay.
maybe Goodluck Jonathan second. But Obasanjo, and this has been very well documented in several places. This is not just me saying it. This is the thing that has been documented by multiple people. Obasanjo, throughout his career, both in the military and as a retired military officer, has been a very close friend of the Americans.
Okay.
So if you recall, in 1998, after the death of Abacha, and then the death of Abiola, who thought of himself as the rightful occupant of the seat, who was it who made the decision that the next president of Nigeria should be Olusegun Obasanjo? Who really made that decision? Was it the Nigerian military? Abacha's military? No, clearly not.
So who was it?
Abacha's military couldn't have made such a decision because Abacha was the one who put Obasanjo in prison.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, Abacha's people did not like Obasanjo.
Yes.
It's not Abdulsalam Abubakar who was like a lame duck placeholder. The person that made that, who actually made that decision was Susan Rice. That was, as far as I'm concerned, that was Nigeria's real head of state.
And who was Susan Rice for people who don't know?
So she was a US diplomat. Diplomat is a code word for high-ranking CIA operative.
Interesting. Okay.
Right? That's what she was. And as far as I'm concerned, after Abacha died, she was basically the de facto head of state of Nigeria. She was the one who made a bunch of those decisions. Wow. So somebody who has always, at every point in his career, has always had those whispers surrounding him. How much of a good person is he? And then in 2015, he queued up with this same US-backed opposition that took Nigeria from 100 to 0. He was one of them. So what you find out about Obasanjo is that he talks a lot of good stuff and he says a lot of things that sound nationalist sometimes. Like I remember he famously made a comment that if the IMF tells you to do something, you say yes and then you do the opposite.
Interesting.
So I like that. But it's also the case that at every point in his career, he has always found a way to somehow, to mysteriously and miraculously always come out on top in places where his contemporaries were either tossed out or died. He always benefited. So when Murtala Muhammad, who thought of himself as like a rabid nationalist, Marxist kind of leader, he was assassinated in 1976. Who benefited from that?
Who?
It was Obasanjo because he became president.
Okay. Then Abacha. No. Sorry. Go on.
Yeah. When Abacha, mysteriously died.
Yeah, but it's very funny how he died. What happened? I mean, because what we all know is that, I don't know if it's true, but he died with having some fun.
Again, that thing about poison information, because somebody made sure that story got into the papers almost as soon as he died. That something about Indian prostitutes and apples.
That's it.
And that has become the accepted narrative for all these years. That he died of a heart attack because he was having sex with an Indian prostitute or something. Meanwhile, his chief of staff, what's his name again? General Al-Mustafa, has said several times, and for whatever reason, nobody ever carries the story, that a few days before Abacha passed away, that he received a delegation from the PLO, that's the Palestinian Liberation Organization led by Yasser Arafat, and that he shook hands with someone in that delegation. And that from that moment, when he shook hands, that he was not himself, and he died a few days later. And then, a few years ago, due to the usual declassification of information, we then find out that Yasser Arafat himself was working for the US government. It's not me that said that again. You can literally Google it. It's on public record. Yasser Arafat was a US agent himself.
Okay.
So how did Abacha really die? We will probably never know, because again, that's just an accusation. Until we see a signed document, maybe declassified 75 years from now, where it doesn't matter anymore. That's when we'll know. But again, a lot of what we heard from that period was just somebody putting, priming the pump, someone poisoning the well. So I wouldn't necessarily take it serious. But if I absolutely had to choose a best, I would choose Goodluck Jonathan. Okay. And to be honest, it gives me no pleasure to say that. Because it's like saying that the best is like, the worst is like a -5 out of 10, and the best is like a +2 or +3.
Okay.
3 out of 10 is still a...
Yeah, it's not. But he is at least the best in terms of...
By default.
Default.
It wasn't really through any... so the economic breakout that we witnessed under him, the trajectory actually started under Obasanjo.
Okay.
So that was not entirely his doing, and it's not fair to credit him entirely for it. So it's like a 50-50 between he and Obasanjo. And then more importantly, the geopolitical, the credit I give to him for making or for not simply being another US puppet, I feel like it's not enough to not just not be a puppet. You also have to strategically be something. You can't just not be something. You also have to be something. So as he decided not to be a US puppet, it's clear that in a world that it's not really a multipolar world. There are 3 poles in the world, and we know what those poles are. If you are rejecting one pole, you have to align yourself with one or 2 other poles. That's the only way to survive. He didn't do that.
Interesting.
So yes, there was Chinese investment in Nigeria. Yes, they tried to sign a Naira Yuan swap deal. Yes, blah, blah, blah. But he knew months, if not years ahead of time, that there was a regime change operation that was being activated against him. He had all the time in the world to make a real statement. Fly to Moscow, sign a defense pact, do something that would have stopped Nigeria falling into the hands of these people in 2015. He didn't. He had every opportunity. And then afterwards in the interviews, he then says, well, he knows that there was the US government the US Navy had a ship, waiting off the coast of Labadi in Ghana, that if anything had happened, they'd have invaded. Yes, but that would only have happened if there was no counterbalancing force. If there's a US Navy destroyer off the coast of Labadi and there's a Russian Navy destroyer off the coast of Takwa Bay in Lagos, nothing will happen.
Because Russia is there now.
Nothing will happen. I think he fell into that trap of, that very disingenuous thing that some people who call themselves anti-imperialists do when they say that, they're all the same. So they'll say that, the AES is not doing anything revolutionary. They're just exchanging one imperialist for another. That they're aligning themselves with Russia. Putin is an imperialist. That thing they say, which is like one of the most dishonest things I've ever heard, but I think he fell into that trap where I'm not going to be a US puppet, but at the same time, I'm just going to be a sitting duck. I'm not going to publicly pick a side. Like, I'm not going to decisively pick a side. Because that's what I would have done. And if I were ever to get into power in Nigeria, which is not very likely, but if I were ever to
we wish you would.
If I were ever to do so, I mean, this is not something I'm saying with any kind of hesitancy whatsoever. The week that I got into power, that same week, like my first international visit will be to Moscow.
Interesting.
To sign all manner of defense pacts. And it's not because, Russia is coming to save us. No, it's because the seriousness of the situation that you are in warrants corresponding force.
Okay.
It's as simple as that. You cannot try to be a sovereign country where there's some guy in Washington that some Anthony Blinken or some Mike Pompeo or some
Rubio
guy, Marco Rubio, who has the power to sign off on an operation to carry out a decapitation strike against your government, and you call yourself sovereign. Like Nicolas Maduro was trying to be sovereign, but it clearly wasn't.
Yeah. We know that now.
It clearly wasn't.
Yeah.
So if you're not like what if you haven't done what the AES have done, you haven't done anything, in my opinion. The AES, they have picked a side. They have been very explicit about it.
Mm-hmm.
They have Russian air defense systems in their country. They have Russian military advisors. They have assistance from Russian intelligence. Again, none of this is because, you know, Russia is sugar daddy that's coming to save anybody. Russia has their own interests. We all know that. We're not babies here. But the point is, you are using, if you like, one great power to fight off another, because that's the only chance you have to become a middle power, right? Because right now you are not a power at all. You are grass that is at the mercy of everybody else.
But,
so,
you know, if I were to craft that plan, I would say, fine, I get why you're going to Russia, but is there a plan that we can formulate as an African?
Of course
people?
there is. And of course that will be the long term.
Yeah,
that is the ultimate long term plan.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing can replace that.
Mm-hmm.
Because even in the AES, and I think I said this on another platform a few weeks ago, that Russia is willing to give the assistance it's giving in the AES now because it has its interests.
Mm-hmm.
The conflict in Sahel is directly linked to the conflict in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's why Russia is so invested in what happens in the Sahel. From Russia's point of view, continued European access to cheap African minerals is a problem for Russia. Because number one, that's starving Russia of revenue, because instead of Russia being the resource base of Europe, they're getting cheap resources from Africa. Number two, those resources which are generally used in military applications, who are those, when Europe finally uses those African resources to rearm itself, who is it going to use those arms on?
Mm-hmm.
It's Russia. So from a Russian point of view, the way to preserve peace and to preserve its market in Europe is to make sure that Europe is not allowed to have access to cheap African resources. And the way to make sure Africa is not allowed to have to make sure that Europe doesn't have access to cheap African resources is to equip Africa to be able to defend itself from Europe and to be able to use its own resources. That's when they're signing parts, for example, to build nuclear reactors in the AES, so that these guys no longer have to sell uranium. They can use it for themselves.
That's it.
It's war. That's literally a war strategy.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what this whole thing is about. And I feel like too many people don't understand that. So I think Goodluck Jonathan fell into that trap. And I don't think, even now, where supposedly he wants to run for office, I don't think he has still figured out that you need to pick a side, which is very unfortunate.
So Nigeria, the biggest oil producer, but it exports most of its crude oil. Now, you see Dangote coming in with his refinery company. What do you think about, at first, he was really disappointed because he's saying, when I built this refinery company, I thought, the government would be happy. But they started telling him, oh, we don't want you to be a monopoly and everything. Then now, when I look at this Dangote thing, I honestly would like the government to seriously, use this refinery to, so that Nigeria can finally refine its oil 100% and sell refined, which is where I think we can all agree that's where the money is. Refined oil is more, profitable than crude oil. What do you think about Dangote, the government, oil, this whole thing? What do you think?
So I actually think this is one of the most clear-cut examples of what neocolonialism looks like.
Okay.
For those who are not visually familiar with it. For those who think that neocolonialism is a fairy tale or it's a conspiracy theory. Because what you have here is a country which, I think Nigeria first started commercially producing oil in the 1930s or 1940s, supported the British World War II effort. It's been producing oil ever since, and supposedly has 4 existing refineries, which have somehow never worked. And then a private businessman comes in, builds a refinery, which is not just a mega refinery. It's the single biggest investment ever in Nigeria's history. Wow. Like, it's the single biggest piece of money someone has ever put into Nigeria at a time before, ever. Wow. More than the Chinese have ever invested at a go, more than anything anyone has ever put into Nigeria. A Nigerian businessman does that. this refinery actually takes off, because there were those who had their doubts. I was one of them.
Okay.
First of all, the timelines were not true, which led me to believe that something very funny is going on here. This thing is not going to work. One way or another, it actually began to work. And then, very curiously, you would think that for the government of an oil-producing country that doesn't refine its oil, and that everybody and we've been told since we're in primary school that Nigeria's basic economic problem is that it exports raw and it imports finished. So everybody and their dog knows that to fix that problem, Nigeria has to export refined petroleum. So you would think that the government of that country would be excited at the prospect of finally supplying raw material to this site in Lagos, and then from there, it's exporting refined petroleum to the world. Instead, very curiously, you then have this government coming out in so many different ways to try and discredit this refinery. The first is you get some guy saying, oh, the output doesn't meet emission standards or some bullshit.
I saw that. I saw that.
Next thing, they start yapping about monopoly. Since when has the Nigerian government cared?
Yeah, about monopoly. Yeah.
Like, since when has that been a thing? How many other monopolies does Dangote have? Does anybody care about that?
Cement. Which other one?
Sugar, yeah. Literally, there is basically one guy that controls the sugar market in Nigeria. That's crazy to think about, but that was never a problem. All of a sudden, when it comes to this one commodity, now you have a problem. Why is that? I mean, it don't take a genius to work out what is going on here. International oil companies whose refining businesses are being squeezed because this is a thing. They actually when they put articles talking about it in Bloomberg and Financial Times, you know it's real. Where they're talking about how refineries like Shell Pernis in Rotterdam, they're losing business because of Dangote refinery. And that expansion plans have been shelved because Dangote refinery is basically eating everybody's lunch. And what they're basically saying, without saying it, right? If you've heard of a term called active listening, I mean, you're not only reading what's being said, you're also listening to what's not being said. What's not being said is Dangote or this Nigerian refinery shouldn't be allowed to eat our lunch because it's not in the role that has been set for Africa in the global economy. The role that has been set is for these guys to supply our raw materials. We process, we gain the economic value of the refined finished product.
Yes.
Now, this Nigerian guy is gaining the benefit of the economic benefit of the finished product that should be ours. And then, I don't know if you saw that news article that the largest source of crude oil, the largest supply of crude oil to Dangote refinery is the US.
Yeah, I saw that.
So for the first time in 500 years or so, there is a manufacturing operation, a large-scale beneficiation operation where the raw material is coming from the so-called global north
to come and to be refined.
And the beneficiation is happening in the world's largest black country. And a bunch of black people are taking the economic benefits of that beneficiation. Can you imagine how upset some people are about this? That is what is happening here. So, you know, I had a few people when I think it was in 2024, there was this NGO called Dialogue Earth that reached out to me that wanted me to do a hit piece on Dangote refinery. I had been one of the critics of the refinery project
at first.
I believe that the timelines were unrealistic. One of the things they did was shortly before President Buhari left office, they did a commissioning ceremony for the refinery, which was not complete. So it was like a political thing because he wanted to cut a ribbon before he left office. But this thing was clearly like more than a year away from being complete.
Okay.
So they were going to town, slapping each other on the back. Congratulations on commissioning the refinery. And I was the one who came out and said, this thing is probably not going to work till 2025 or so. Like, this thing is an uncompleted project. Why are you cutting a ribbon over an uncompleted project? So these were the things that made me feel like, Because Dangote has played these games before where he acts like he's going all in on something. Meanwhile, he's just looking for an importation license for that thing. Because one of the things he did when he was building this refinery was that he proposed that only those who run refineries in Nigeria should be allowed to have importation licenses for refined fuel. So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, here we go again. Because he did the same thing with sugar. Where he claimed that he's going all in on sugar refining, and he didn't really, but somehow ended up with sugar importation licenses. So I thought that's what this was. But I was one of the critics, but this turned out to be the real deal.
Okay.
So this NGO reached out to me thinking that I'm just a mindless hater or something.
Yeah.
And they offered me money to write a hit piece, basically saying that this refinery is bad for the environment. It violates Nigeria's commitments under COP28, energy transition, all that. And I basically put them on blast. I put them on blast. I put their email on Twitter, everything. Like I took screenshots, everything. This is what these people want me to do.
Wow.
They want to pay me $500 they are looking for a prominent Nigerian commentator to put his name and face in front of a Western attack against this refinery, because that's what it is. It's a Western attack. These people don't want this refinery to exist and or to operate. So they're using a Nigerian commentator to tell the Nigerian government that this thing violates Nigeria's commitments that have been made under COP28, blah, blah, blah. So in other words, the Nigerian government should shut it down because it's bad for the environment.
Yes. But this NGO, where does it come from? Like,
Dialogue Earth is a British NGO.
British, okay.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's a British NGO. It's based in London. So when I did that, when I had that display where I put them on blast, certain people were like, why would you of all people be supporting Dangote? Like you have never liked this guy.
Yeah.
You regularly describe him as an economic parasite, as a monopolist. Some people were saying that, like, why would you of all people have something positive to say about this Dangote? Why would you support his business venture? And for me, it's obvious that it's not just a private business venture. It's an important piece of national infrastructure. If Nigeria or if Africa is going to reverse that economically ruinous road that has been prescribed for it, that all you should do is supply raw materials to the global market in perpetuity, then these are the exact kind of things you need. You need to beneficiate those resources you're exporting. How do you beneficiate crude oil? You refine it.
Of course.
The same way, if you want to beneficiate gold, you refine it and you turn it into gold bullion instead of gold nuggets. Right? If you want to beneficiate tomatoes, you build a factory. So what's not to like about this? Why would, So, but as I said, I think this is one of the most clear-cut examples of what neocolonialism actually looks like in the modern day in Africa, where the people who are actually responsible for keeping things the way they are, they tend to stay almost entirely out of sight. Now, so if you're not perceptive, you will not realize that what you're interacting with is a colonial behemoth. You will think you're interacting with Africans like you. So like this Dialogue Earth thing that I spoke about, the person who emailed me is a Kenyan.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're not careful, you'll think, oh, this is a Kenyan emailing me. The address is in Nairobi, somewhere in Westland or Kilimani or something. So this is a Kenyan NGO. It's a Kenyan environmental organization that is concerned about something happening in another African country. That's what it looks like. Until you peel 2 inches beneath the surface and you realize, okay, who is paying this Kenyan guy? Who is his boss? And it turns out to be some Muzungu in London. And then you do some more digging and who is behind Dialogue Earth? And then you start seeing the same old funding entities that are linked to US intelligence agencies. And you're like, oh, okay, that's what that is. So I guess if there's one thing that I would like for people to make a habit of now is to become more suspicious of whatever information is put in front of their eyes. Because these characters have become very, very good at digital blackface.
Interesting.
They become very good at presenting neo-colonial agendas using what looks like you. They're excellent at it now.
Okay.
You know, this goes even beyond like economic warfare and stuff. Sometimes even their information wars, like on social media, they have armies of bot accounts whose display pics are AI generated and they look just like you. You know, you think you're talking to an African, to a black person, you're talking to a computer somewhere in Vienna or something, and you don't know. So people just need to become a bit more, a bit less credulous about what's really happening in the world. These things are real. These things do happen. We interact with these systems on a daily basis and we don't even know what we are looking at.
So Dangote, so what do you think is going to happen in future with the refinery? You think the government is finally going to take his refinery seriously and to take refining, just oil refining in general, locally? Like, what do you think?
I mean, famous last words, you know, knock wood. But I think at this point, he has hit the too big to fail mark. I think they've already tried they've thrown the kitchen sink at it and it has just not worked. The fellow I talked about who was talking about how it's a monopoly or it doesn't meet emission standards, he's resigned.
Okay.
So I think that particular war has been won and lost.
Okay.
I think, again, just because of the sheer size and scale of this refinery, you simply can't destroy it without fundamentally discrediting everything about yourself as a Nigerian government. I mean, the largest single investment ever made in Nigerian history. You can't destroy it. Because if you do, you're going to die, basically. I don't know who is going to kill you, and I'm not suggesting anything, but you're going to die.
Interesting.
So I think it's too big to fail. I think it started a bit slowly because the government has done everything in its power to frustrate. They don't supply crude to the refinery. I'm sure I just mentioned refinery sources crude from the US.
I know.
Because the Nigerian government said we have already locked all our crude production into long-term contracts, so we don't have anything for you. You know,
even Angola, some of Angola's oil is coming into Dangote refineries.
Exactly, but there's almost no Nigerian oil feeding it. It is what it is. So, but it's succeeded.
Yeah.
And I don't think at this point, I think it has hit escape velocity. Now, as to whether the Nigerian government will take refining seriously, first of all, I think it's unimportant now. I think whether the government does or doesn't, that ship has already sailed. However, do I think it's going to take refining seriously? Absolutely not. The reason simply being that historical precedents that Nigeria already had 4 refineries and it never worked. I mean, I don't want to put somebody into trouble by saying this, so I won't mention his name.
Okay.
But I have a friend who, let's just say, works in the oil space. I won't mention the name of the company because it might identify him. He works in the oil space and he had this bright idea some years back that, hey, he went to meet his bosses. So the oil entity is based in the US. So he walks into his boss's office. He has a bright idea one day. Like, look, I come from Nigeria. Like, there are 4 non-functioning refineries there. I'm sure with our resources and our know-how and our expertise, we can go in there. We can do something. We can turn it around. We can turn this into a functional asset. And I'm quoting him. This is what he told me. I'm quoting him verbatim. That his boss, the Muzungu boss, looked at him and said, they have 4. If they really wanted to refine, what makes you think that they wouldn't already be doing so? And what makes you think that if they haven't wanted to do so all this while, that it's your entry that is going to make them do it now? Long story short, the boss gave him a blank check. Go and do what you think you can do there. And he went in, he met with, this was during the Buhari era.
Okay.
And he met with the then Minister of State for Petroleum, and there was a lot of back and forth and back and forth. And after about close to a year of back and forth and back, come to my office today, come tomorrow, come to the office. They keep him outside waiting. You can hear them watching Champions League football inside. After all that, it became abundantly clear. Nobody's interested. And that's not by accident. Because think about what his boss said. If you are taking what his boss said at face value, then you are thinking that his boss is blaming the Nigerians. His boss is simply saying those people are incompetent or they don't want to refine the oil. Well, again, if you listen actively, what the boss is also not saying is that I know something that you don't.
Which is?
I know that these refineries are never going to work.
Okay.
And I can't tell you how I know, but I know. That's what his boss was basically telling him.
Hey, Nigeria.
So that's what neocolonialism looks like. Because, again, because so many Nigerians have this very unhelpful idea that Nigeria is this very big, important, powerful country.
Yeah.
So because of that, a lot of them don't even realize that this your big, important, powerful country is being used as a plaything by all these global entities. The business entities, the political entities, they're being used as Nigeria doesn't command more international weight than Eswatini in the eyes of these people. A lot of Nigerians don't know that. So just because, you have 230 million people, 930,000 square kilometers of that, you have every resource known to man, you have this, you have that. That doesn't mean that these people don't control every aspect of your public life, of your government, because they do. They're just very, very good at couching it behind 2 or 3 layers of plausible deniability. So you won't see a white face when you go there. You will only see faces that look just like yours. So if you don't understand how to trace things to their ultimate source, you will just end up with the idea that everything in front of you is all there is. And then that's where you hear Nigerians have expressed these very problematic ideas, talking about, something is wrong with black people, something is just wrong with Nigerians. Nigerians have psychological problems, all of which is nonsense.
Nigeria will happen to you. That's what I've heard. Nigeria will happen.
All of which is nonsense.
Yeah.
Nigeria is a rational country functioning exactly the way it is being actively piloted to function.
Let's talk about insecurity, because that's probably the biggest issue that's going on right now. I think probably, I don't know whether you think that insecurity is, do you think that the insecurity issue in northern Nigeria is like the biggest problem right now in Nigeria?
I think it's a symptom.
It's a symptom
of the biggest problem.
Okay.
And that problem is still the basic fact that Nigerians are not in control of Nigeria. Nigerians don't know what is happening in Nigeria. So it's possible to look at something and not see what's going on. So if you're looking at the situation, all you're seeing is violence, genocidal violence, or what looks like genocidal violence. You're seeing people being driven off their land, people ending up in IDP camps, people being slaughtered. That's all you are seeing. So if you are taking it again at face value, then you are looking for a face value explanation. And one of those explanations is, the Muslims are killing Christians. They are killing Christians. Very simple, easy to understand explanations, which unfortunately don't capture how the world really works. I was telling someone this the other day that across the north and middle belt of Nigeria, where in a lot of these places, they are both Christian and Muslim populations. In a lot of these places, like one village might be majority Muslim, one might be majority Christian. But it's not as if like there's one like homogeneously Muslim or homogeneously Christian. That's not how it works. It's always been mixed. What is the only statistical measure that you can use to make sense of these attacks that happen? Because you will see in one village they kill 69 Christians, in another village they kill 84 Muslims. Why are Islamic terrorists killing Muslims?
Yeah.
For what reason? Okay, let's say they are Islamic terrorists and they want to kill Christians and traditional worshippers. That's fine. We understand that. Why are they killing Muslims? And then why are they killing more Muslims than any other people? Since these are traditional, since these are Islamic terrorists who are trying to set up an Islamic caliphate, that's the cover explanation. Why did they target some villages? Why did they ignore some others? Why is it that this village might get wiped out and this other village that is right next to it, there might be an attack, but it doesn't get wiped out? Why is that? And then the population in both places, they are both mixed. They're both Christian, they're both Muslim, the ethnicities, because there are hundreds of ethnicities that sort of fold in over each other in that part of the country as well. They're not like very clearly defined entities. It makes no sense. The only time it makes sense is when you overlay the map of these attacks with the geological map of Nigeria, mapping where all the resources are. And then you realize that what you are witnessing is simply places being cleared out for the sake of mining. It's DR Congo. That's it. That's the simple answer. It's DR Congo. That's what's happening. Nigeria is basically North Kivu.
Wow.
Simple as that. Like, I just solved the terrorism question. It's not Kivu. That's what's happening. But because it's not an obvious answer that's in your face, you don't realize that this is what is going on. And again, because Nigerians have these very unhelpful ideas of how supposedly powerful Nigeria is. Nigeria is actually a very weak country, as it is currently. It might have numbers and it doesn't have territorial sovereignty. It's a very easy to penetrate kind of place. So yeah, that's what is happening. And I say this I'm not exonerating myself here either, because I used to be one of these people too, parroting these very simple explanations for everything. In fact, in 2020, shortly before the then US Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, left office, the very last major decision he made was to designate Nigeria as a country of particular concern, right, for violation of religious freedom. Okay. The reason he designated Nigeria was that a report had been submitted to the State Department, a report that I worked on. Right. So if you check the report, there are 3 names on the report, and then there's et al. I'm one of the et al. Right. So there were 2 NGOs involved in making this report. Again, at the time, I was a lot more naive than I am now. I didn't understand then that if anybody comes to you with anything, asking you to be part of a project, the first question you need to ask is who is funding it? Where's the money coming from? Because from understanding where the money is coming from, you know what the agenda is. I didn't know any of this then. So I was approached, come help us work on a documentation project. We're documenting evidence of violence in northern Nigeria. So that's what I thought I was doing. I'm doing the right thing. I'm lending my talents to documenting how these innocent people have been slaughtered. So we basically went around for months around northern Nigeria, gathering evidence of people being slaughtered, death certificates and all that kind of stuff. And we came out with a report. The report was called Silent Slaughter, Nigeria's Genocide in Nigeria and Implications for the International Community. It was by 2 NGOs called ICON, International Committee on Nigeria, a British NGO, and PSG, that's the International Project for Peace Building and Social Justice, also a British NGO, with UK government funding. Okay. Just to be absolutely clear. So we published that report, and what that report basically said, you can download this report, it's available online. Okay. What this report basically said was, this is conclusive evidence that Christians are being targeted for slaughter. Christians are being genocided. Okay. In Nigeria. Now, at the time, again, being the naive so-and-so that I was, it didn't occur to me to ask certain questions, apart from the funding and whatnot. What was the methodology of that report? The data gathering, what was the methodology? Because we went around these places gathering things like death certificates. Now, you obviously live in a multi-religious country. You have some idea of what the burial practices are for both major religions. Yeah. Where are you more likely, or with which group are you more likely to find death certificates?
Christians, huh?
Obviously. Yeah. Because when a Muslim dies, he's buried before sunset.
The same day.
There's no death certificate. There's nothing. It's gone. That's the end. It's over. It's the Christians that are likely to put them in a morgue and then do documentation, death certificates. So we went around intentionally gathering skewed evidence. So if 84 Muslims were killed here and 67 Christians were killed here, we gathered evidence of the 67 Christians and completely erased the 84.
Okay.
And then compiled those things into a report and presented it to the US government and said, this is evidence that Christians are being genocided in Nigeria. And I was a part of that. Of course, not knowing what I was doing, not understanding who I was working for, I thought I was just doing the right thing.
Yes.
So Mike Pompeo designates Nigeria, and then Anthony Blinken comes in, takes Nigeria off the list. Then Marco Rubio comes in, designates Nigeria again, and next thing Trump starts talking about Christians are being killed in Nigeria, then Ted Cruz. And that report is the narrative basis for all these kites they have been flying. If you query them, that based on what are you saying there's a specific genocide of Christians in Nigeria, they will point to my report.
So your report was the baseline?
Yes.
Interesting.
So you then realize, when you then draw the line back far enough, who funded this thing? What was the purpose of this? You then realize this whole thing was planned ahead of time. And you were not even a protagonist. You were just a useful idiot. Someone already planned ahead of time. We need to be paper ready. Yeah? We need to create a paper trail proving this thing, this tenuous thing that we want to prove, and use that as premise for military intervention, knowing fully well that we have a different goal in mind altogether. Whether Christian or Muslim, anybody that is not their business. Everybody knows that. They have rare earth minerals and other things that they want, other things that we don't even know that we have. But they know. And they want those things. And this is the premise that they're going to use. So as far back as 2019, someone had already been setting up the narrative infrastructure and co-opting people who didn't know any better, including myself, to take part in their own funeral, which is effectively what I was doing.
Wow. Now, when you heard Trump tweeting, I'm coming guns blazing to come and protect Christians in Nigeria, then you see Nikki, of course, Trump is using Nikki to push this agenda. When you saw that tweet, and then Nikki, of course, what's the first thing that came to your mind before we even go to the bombing that came later during Christmas?
The first thing that came to my mind is, oh no, not again. Because we've seen this exact script before. If you recall, during a similar campaign in 2014 called Bring Back Our Girls.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, that was big.
P. Diddy, Chris Rock, Michelle Obama,
everybody.
I think Taylor Swift.
Yeah,
they got all the Hollywood all-stars holding hashtag Bring Back Our Girls and all of that. That was all part of a regime change operation. Bring Back Our Girls was the big event in the marketing strategy part of the regime change operation. It was literally like a few months to the election.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see.
That's what that was all about.
So now what do you think about the Christmas bombing that happened in the Sokoto, right? Was it in Sokoto State?
Oh, late last year.
Yes, the Christmas bombing last year in Sokoto State. What do you think about that?
To be honest, I was kind of more focused on the US airstrikes. So as terrible as it sounds, those things have become everyday news in Nigeria. So when you hear that there was a suicide bombing in a mosque or a church, it's Tuesday.
Okay.
So it's not something that necessarily you pay that much attention to. The reason that particular one got all that airplay that it did was, again, because at that point in time, it served somebody's narrative purposes. Somebody was trying to portray Nigeria a certain way at that time. So it served the purpose at that time to turn this into a huge production. Just the same way Bring Back Our Girls served the purpose at that time. They turned that abduction into this international event. Meanwhile, there have been other abductions since then, even bigger, which you never heard about. So again, it goes back to what I was saying when we talked about Sani Abacha.
Yes.
Poisoned information from a poisoned source for a specific geopolitical purpose. People need to become more wary of it.
So what's the purpose that they wanted to serve at that particular point with the over publication of that bombing of the US airstrike that happened in Christmas last year.
No, if you're trying to justify military intervention, then you need to show that the country is unstable.
Okay.
They can't govern themselves. The situation is critical, and they need you to come in and save them.
Okay. So there are more strikes coming.
I played the fifth.
That's what Ahmed told me, that that was a test. Most likely, once this Venezuela thing cools down, there's more. And I think Trump alluded to that recently. What do you think?
I played the fifth.
But let's say if it were, right? What's the end game here? Is America trying to, well, everybody was saying this is an oil theft that's fixing to happen.
It's not as simple as oil.
Okay.
This isn't 2005. It's a lot more than oil.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, and I think I've addressed this in one of the video I've done previously, the world is, the so-called unipolar world is breaking down. The US is no longer the sole undisputed hegemon of the world. There are now at least 2 or 3 what it calls near peer powers. That's Russia and China, plus other ones that are no longer that easy to push around, like North Korea and Pakistan or whatnot. So that's what they call the multipolar order, even though it's really just a tripolar order as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Now, what has happened? One of the things that happened was that China recently restricted exports of refined rare earth minerals to the US. For those who don't know, rare earth minerals are everywhere. They're inside this, they're inside your TV, they're inside your car, they're inside everything.
Everywhere.
Any kind of modern electronics. And they're also inside everything that relates to the military, to war. They're in drones, they're in tanks, they're in aircraft, they're in everything. So whoever controls the rare earth mineral supply chain becomes the military hegemon of tomorrow. China controls a huge majority of the global rare earth supply chain. Now the US government sees that exposure to China as a strategic weakness. So their goal, and all of this is not me hypothesizing, this is what they themselves have said.
Okay.
I'm quoting their trade secretary or the commerce secretary, Steve Lutnick, and the trade secretary, Scott Bessent, where they basically said, we are going to create a rare earth minerals mining and refining supply chain of our own in 2 years. Because the current supply chain is almost entirely dependent on China.
Okay.
They want to create their own for the sake of their national security. Now, 2 things you need to know about rare earths. First of all, the process of refining is extremely toxic and environmentally destructive. Nobody wants to do it on their own territory. The only reason China controls that much of that technology is because, first of all, China has vast territory, and they've been able to master the refining technology in such a way that they've been able to minimize how environmentally disastrous it is. So they don't need to outsource it to anywhere else, so they can do it on their territory. Nobody else has that same level of sophistication. So if anybody is going to do any sort of large-scale solid minerals refining, they don't want to do it on their territory. They want to do it on someone else's land.
Okay.
The second thing is, where is it in the world right now that you can find these rare earths in the concentrations that you need to be able to mine them commercially in a place that is not already controlled by one of these other near-peer adversaries? You can't get them from the Sahel because Russia.
Yes.
Right? Obviously can't get them from China anymore. Which was the only other place in Sahelian West Africa that isn't under the control of, say, Russia or something. It's northern Nigeria.
Okay.
So you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Northern Nigeria has everything you want. So you can do the large-scale strip mining there after you clear all the inhabitants out. And they think that it's genocide against whoever. Meanwhile, it's genocide against Nigerians for the sake of mining. You can do your mining there, and you can also do the refining there, and all your trial and error there. If anybody's water supply gets poisoned, it's a bunch of black people that dies. Nobody cares. If anybody's land gets poisoned, it's a bunch of Africans. Who cares? So you basically solved your supply issue and you've outsourced your risk. That's what that is about. The oil is, Trump doesn't need Nigerian oil because he already has it.
He already has Nigerian oil.
Yeah.
But what about people saying that this is a way of getting into Niger and weakening AES?
It's possible. It's almost a given that will be one of the goals. So it's killing multiple birds with one stone.
This is deep. Well, this has been very productive. I'm really like, we hear about Nigeria. We hear a lot of things about Nigeria, but it's one thing to get not only a Nigerian, but an investigative journalist who has sources, who knows everybody, who knows everything, to really come and tell us what Nigeria is all about. And that's what you've really done. You've really taught me so much about Nigeria. And I think as we conclude, what can you say? Okay, you know what? What's the last word you can, if you can look to this camera, what's the last word you'd like to give to Nigerians? A word of hope, a word of, just a word of encouragement, or anything you'd like to say to Nigerians?
Okay, so I watched a video last night that kind of got me in my feelings a bit. It was a Nigerian content creator. There's a new wave of Nigerian content where people find people who look like they're in need of help, and then they basically solve their problems. And it's great to watch because the beneficiary is so emotional and everything. In this case, it was this kid who apparently turned out to be 19 years old, who is working as like a scavenger. And the content creator approaches him and asks him, why is he doing that job? Would you rather be doing something else? And the kid says, well, he trained to be a tiler, and he learned in 2017 when he was 10 years old that he hasn't become a tiler because he hasn't been able to do freedom from his trainer. Freedom is a Nigerian term for like graduation, basically, from his vocational trainer. That what he needs to do his freedom is a tile cutting machine and some other equipment. And basically, because he doesn't have those things, he's stuck scavenging, basically. So this content creator takes him first to a barber shop, gets him a haircut, then to a boutique, gets him some nice clothes, to a restaurant, gets him some nice food, and then surprises him with a brand new tiling machine. And this kid looks at the tiling machine and just completely breaks down in tears, and he's hugging the tiling machine as if it's a long lost friend or something. Like, this little thing is going to change his life. And I Googled, how much is this thing? Like, that exact machine he was holding. Like, I checked it out on Jumia. So I'm watching it in Kenya. So the price was in Kenyan shillings. It was 4,900 Kenyan shillings. It's not a lot of money. But that thing was life-changing for this kid. Why that thing got me in my feelings so much was that this kid, and millions, because there are millions like him across Nigeria who are never going to get to see a content creator that will make their dreams come true. This kid should never have been in that situation to begin with. This kid is in that situation because he's trapped in an economy that is not creating value for him. Under a government that is not working for his betterment. He's trapped in an economy that is creating value for Europeans and for Americans, under a government that works for Europeans and Americans. It's possible for a content creator to change his life, and he got 10 million views and everybody's happy because one life has been changed. But a government doing a similar thing could have changed 10 million lives easily without breaking a sweat. And it wouldn't even be news because that's the job of a government. Some people have convinced us that the state, or that state capacity, is something that we can live without, or is something we don't need to think about. Whether it's in the name of capitalism, whether it's in the name of whatever ideology that they've been exporting to us, some people have managed to convince us that living like this is okay. living without expectations is okay. Living like a lizard crawling on the sand, literally eating sand, is okay. There's no problem with it, because that's how things are meant to be, and it's the will of God. It's not the will of God. It's not how things are meant to be. It's the will of a white man in Washington, D.C. And that white man is not immortal. He's not smarter than you. He's not a better human than you. His life is not worth more than your own. The only advantage he has over you is organization. That's all. He's greedy and he's organized. And using those two things together, he has been able to take over your economy and reduce you to the low subsistence level. If you ever want anything to change, if you ever want to have a better life, it is possible. There are things you can do, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you what you should or shouldn't do, because I think we all know the exact things that we should and shouldn't do. And we all know exactly who the people are that are responsible for this, who their local collaborators are, where they live, the jobs they have, where you can find them on any given day. We know all of these things. So if you put all these little data points together, it doesn't take a genius to work out what the course of action should be. And I'll leave it at that.
David, thank you so much for coming. When you come to Kenya again, we need to do I had a list of a lot of stuff we need to talk about. Maybe when you come back again, we'll do a part 2. But thank you. And guys, it's been a good one. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and support Sell Afrika. Africans support West African Weekly, right?
The Spearhead.
Spearhead. Yeah, Spearhead. Oh, yeah. I'm a fan of Spearhead, by the way. So, is there any other platform that you'd like people to follow and subscribe and to support?
Well, you can follow the Spearhead on all the major traditional social media. You can also follow it on Upscrolled, which is the new and improved non-Western popular social media app, which is taking off now. So we have a presence on Upscrolled. It's at Spearhead_AF. That's Spearhead Africa. So it's Spearhead_AF. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.